Immortal Cultivation in the Cybernetic Milky Way. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 326a. Small miscalculation. Nanling was like a hellfire demon at this time, burning everything he saw. However, his flames became cleaner and cleaner, because he finally had a concept in his flames, which was called purification. To be honest, although he had a talent for fire and had built the 11th level of foundation building with fire spirit power, he did not have much understanding of that concept of fire spirit power, which was really a failure. This must be because Boss Fanny was too stupid. Just by exchanging experiences, Mo made him easily understand the concept of lightning swiftness. Nanling was thinking in his heart, and his speed was not slow at all. There were blazing flames everywhere he passed. And these were all blazing flames that contained his will and concepts, clearing away all the filth he saw in this layer. But Nanling had another feeling about this, but he had no time to pay more attention to this feeling at this time. He just rushed all the way to the entrance of the third underground floor. At this time, the second underground floor was full of flames. The temperature of the flames was not high, but it had extremely strong heat penetration. Even if the outer shell was well insulated, it could easily burn through and turn the things inside into ashes. On the last floor, there was a gorgeous suite. Nanling saw the person he expected on this floor, that is, the Judge Abiye. He was trembling as he watched Nanling walk into the room. Behind Nanling was a long corridor of flames. No one survived along the way. Whether it was the guards or the servants, they all turned into ashes in the flames. Nanling's eyes were angry, but his heart burned everything calmly. Flame Demon Armor, from the Gyu family. Another person suddenly spoke. Nanling looked in the direction of the voice, and then laughed. I almost forgot about you, poor little Jindan. The Jindan cultivator's face was pale, and he looked exhausted, which looked a little pitiful. But Nanling's tone of voice clearly did not mean to pity him. At this time, the counselor of Yaji had realized something. He said, it's not Miss Gyu I want to deal with. It's the Food First Consortium, it's them. Nanling didn't give him a chance to continue talking nonsense. He just said lightly, your death is enough to warn some people. He didn't think about how to torture this man-eating demon. He just threw a flame over, wrapped it in it and burned it quickly. The scorching flames instantly took away all the moisture on Counselor Yug's body, and then made him burn from the inside. He quickly dried and carbonized, emitting bursts of burnt stench. Nanling didn't care about this. In fact, wherever he passed by, there was this burnt stench, like purgatory. What about Yug's life? Just kill him, as long as you clear your relationship. At this time, the Jindan cultivator suddenly said, you have already killed the person you want to kill. I'm just your guard he hired. Now that my employer is dead, there is no need for me to fight to the death for my employer. The implication is that he wants to let him go. Nanling shook his head and said, no, you have to die too, otherwise you won't be able to shock others. This Jindan cultivator must die, and he must die quickly and cleanly. So he attacked again, sweeping away with raging fire. Although the Jindan cultivator's mind was severely damaged, his cultivation was still online. He nervously used the low temperature created by his own water spirit power to resist, then he unexpectedly discovered that Nanling's flame was not as terrible as he appeared. Although it was a Jindan level killing, it actually felt a little lacking in thickness compared to normal Jindan. There was no way around it, because other people's Jindan were formed by the 10th level of foundation building, while Nanling's flame spirit power was only the 11th level of foundation building. Perhaps there would be some changes after the real formation of the 11th level. You are not that strong. The Jindan realized this and spoke in surprise. Nanling did not say anything, and rushed forward and punched him hard. The Jindan was inspired and pulled out a short stick from his sleeve to resist. But the next moment his eyes widened. Because Nanling punched his short stick, and actually knocked the spiritual weapon back. The terrifying force was even greater than that of the robot. No, the power of the robot can be offset by the spiritual thoughts and spiritual power of the cultivator. But Nanling's huge force can directly break the blockade of spiritual power and divine thoughts and finally fall into the chest of the Jindan cultivator. Bang! With a crisp sound, the chest of the Jindan cultivator was like a drum. And the next moment, Nanling's fist had already smashed into the chest of the Jindan cultivator, and the terrifying force directly penetrated into the Jindan. Terrifying power. Nanling's cultivation has never been just about spiritual power and magic. Compared with the cultivators of this era, his body is actually a great killing weapon. It's just that the tools of this era are so good that many people have neglected to polish their own flesh. What Nanling has to do is to kill the enemy with this blow. It must be done in this way to clear himself of the relationship, and it is also to deter the powerful enemy. He believes that there must be a union cultivator in the Ajie clan. But he also believed that union cultivators must be very rare and precious to the Ajie clan. He believed that under such circumstances, the other party would not dare to send union cultivators to gamble with him. After all, the Ajie clan was very weak, and they were used to compromise in the face of strength. Nanling did this, and the surging flames were poured into the chest of the Jindan cultivator, and even directly touched the opponent's Jindan. This is a fragile Jindan, which will break at the touch. That is natural. After all, the strength of the Jindan cultivator needs to rely on the body to play, rather than relying on the Jindan to do whatever he wants. This Jindan cultivator is dead, and he is completely speechless. But Nanling's killing obviously aroused his determination to die. He stared at Nanling with a pair of resentful eyes, and then was engulfed by the surging flames. But his body was not completely carbonized. Instead, a terrifying torrent of spiritual power was formed at the moment when the Jindan shattered. This torrent of spiritual power is all water spiritual power, which is the foundation accumulated by this Jindan cultivator for many years. Now, it was scattered all at once as the golden elixir was broken. No, it was not scattered, but at that moment, with the final will of its owner, it suddenly all poured into Nanling's body. This was really beyond Nanling's expectation. Although the fire spiritual power with the concept of purification blocked a large part, there was still a part of the cold water spiritual power that rushed into Nanling's meridians and even rushed into his Danton. His head as he inhaled and exhaled, and what he exhaled was actually a mouthful of cold mist. This was really too bad. Nanling knew that he had committed a big to-do, that is, he should not touch the opponent's body to attack when his actual cultivation was weaker than the opponent. Now, although the person was beaten to death by him, he was also invaded by the alien spiritual power. This is the spiritual power of a golden elixir cultivator, and from his performance, it is even a strong man of the 5th level of the golden elixir. But now there is no other way. Nanling can only escape by wind escape immediately. When he came, he was invisible and traceless, but when he left, the cold wind whistled. This was because his body was infected by the alien spiritual power and he was unable to control it. But fortunately, he still had emergency measures. Chapter 327. Actually, it is delivered to your door. Nanling felt very bad at this time. The cold water spirit power in his Danton was constantly radiating his body, making him cold and his muscles stiff. At this time, he could only pour his own fire spirit power into his Danton, and then burn and suppress these majestic water spirit powers together with the fire of essence. This was difficult, and Nanling even needed the help of wind spirit power to do it. Then there would be problems with his control of the spirit power in his whole body. He could no longer fully control his own power. So he thought about it and did something very straightforward. He merged into the wind and disappeared on the spot again. This time, the wind escape was slightly inferior, and he failed to control his spiritual power fluctuations to hide completely. But it seemed that no one in this mansion cared about these things, right? After all, he had just killed everyone. But he was a little surprised. Why didn't anyone come to check? Although it was not long since he revealed his whereabouts, it had been 10 minutes, right? Then he showed up in a far corner, but heard a mechanical voice suddenly come from the side. Is it done? Nanling looked to their side in surprise. But there was an abandoned vending machine that suddenly lit up. There was no way to buy things, but its sound device was completely fine. Nanling looked pleased. Sister Liji. The vending machine said. Who else could it be? It looks like you made a mistake. There was no need to worry about mistakes, because Sister Liji was his emergency measure this time. Nanling said. A little bit, but Sister Liji doesn't need to block the alarm over there now. We can't let the other party suspect that we had the ability to affect the system of this space station. A digital life quietly hid in this space station. It seemed that Lulai, who had seen some clues before, did not explain this matter to the outside world, so they had much more room for maneuver. However, Liji's response surprised him. She said, "Don't worry, they didn't send out an alarm at all. I just found that your breath was not hidden so well when you left, so I came to care about you." Nanling was slightly stunned when he heard this, and then he understood the reason. He said, "It seems that the congressman also knows what kind of evil is in his house. Sister Liji, I'm going back now and may leave some traces. Can I erase all these traces silently? Li Ji said cheerfully, it's a small matter. Do you need me to erase the traces of invasion in that house as well? Nanling said, not all of them. Just erase the traces of leaving. Li Ji replied, okay, go back and rest quickly. I can only feel relieved when you return to the two ladies. Nanling did not answer this time, and he left again by wind escape. And this time he did not take any decret, but left directly in the air. At this time, his control over himself was not so perfect, and some instruments along the way would naturally find abnormalities. However, these abnormal readings would be immediately erased and replaced by Li Ji with superb technical means, so that Nanling would not leave any traces in the process of passing. As a digital life, Li Ji's role in this environment is really too strong. In the end, Nanling returned to the Fanolin building safely. Go through the maintenance passage you are most familiar with. The front and back doors are blocked. They are reviewing our business qualifications. Nanling directly sent a message in the group. The problem has been solved. These people are not a concern. Fanny was the first to speak. Are you back? Mo asked. Are you injured? Nanling answered. I'm back. I was hit when a Jindan counterattacked, but it's not a big problem. I'll recuperate first. Fanny. Rest quickly. Recovery should be useful. Mo also said. I'll prepare the health cabin for you. The mess here, Fanny said disapprovingly. Leave the mess to Kao and Testin by the way. The other side seemed to be in a panic. Nanling quickly stopped him and said, don't worry, I will rest in an emergency secret room underground this time, and by the way, I will retrieve to adjust my own breath. I have to prepare for the formation of the elixir. The other side did not insist. Nanling came to the secret room he prepared, and then Li Ji teased him. How many emergency measures have you prepared in this building? Nanling smiled and said, how can I tell for sure? It's not that he didn't want to say it, but he was still constantly adding these emergency measures, and he couldn't guarantee when he would have inspiration. Li Ji probably understood what he meant, and could only say helplessly, I really can't do anything with you. Do I need to send you food if you retreat? Nanling said, no, although my secret room is not big, it has all the necessary survival supplies. You just need to help them deal with the things above. As he said that, he sat cross-legged in this secret room alone. At this time, a robot controlled by Li Ji had helped him bring the Fire Wing Flying Sword and the Thunder Wing Scene Blade over. This is indeed very important, because the fire spiritual power in the spiritual array in his body is obviously unable to suppress the rebellious water spiritual power, but with the Fire Wing Flying Sword, it is different. This flying sword, as a spiritual treasure he refined, can also be equivalent to his Danton with complete fire attributes. The fire spirit power stored inside completely obeyed his command. Now, under the blessing of his newly realized concept of purification, it was injected into his Danton in an orderly manner. The chaotic water spirit power was immediately suppressed and controlled by the majestic fire spirit power. Nanling pondered for a while and did not take any further action. After all, the fire spirit power and the water spirit power were in conflict. If he forced it too much, it might explode directly in his body. He decided to use his wind spirit power to expel the water spirit power. The wind spirit power is really a scumbag. Not only can it match the thunder spirit power and the fire spirit power at the same time, but now it seems that there is nothing wrong with adding the water spirit power. Not only is there nothing wrong, Nanling only felt that as long as he used the wind spirit power to separate the water and fire spirit power, he could even completely control the water spirit power. He was at a loss for a moment, and then suddenly realized something. That is, the water spirit power was directly injected into his Danton. Originally, this water spirit might still have the residual will of the golden elixir, but when it passed through Nanling's fire spirit barrier containing the concept of purification and entered the Danton, it should have been in a blank state. And what is his Danton? It is the furnace where his essence is stored, where his essence and flames are burning fiercely. Similarly, it is also the place where his personal concept of existence is strongest. Therefore, these water spirits are quickly refined in this process, and now they are actually considered part of his body. It is estimated that the golden elixir cultivator never thought that Nanling's body would be so strong that the invasion of alien spirits cannot damage the meridians and joints, and even after a brief discomfort, it can be directly delivered to the door. Nanling couldn't help but feel a little entangled. What does he want water spirits for? His head suddenly tilted, he felt that it seemed to be useful, why not give it a try? As a man of action, he just felt that it was a waste to discharge all the refined water spirits, so he simply prepared to make use of the waste. Chapter 328. Fanny's art of rounding up. Neither Fanny nor Mo were interested in receiving the guards who came to check the water meter. These guards were led by 3 guard officers, and the rest were guard robots. This lineup came here to deliver food to Liji. If she wanted, she could tell these people what the intelligent crisis was in a minute. But she didn't. She still abided by the order of human society. Fanny and Mo didn't come forward to deal with this matter at all. They happily handed the people to Kat to accompany them, and then they moved a sofa, wearing the gorgeous clothes made by Nanling for them, and sat lazily in the lobby on the first floor watching the other party busy. Boss, they smashed our kitchen. A tenant came to complain with a sad face. Fanny waved her hand and said, let them smash it, record the loss, and I will double it for you. The tenant hurriedly said, how dare we, how can we ask the boss for money? Fanny said, this matter was originally caused by us. You are frightened. Just think of it as mental compensation for you. The boss's generosity made the tenants grateful. Opposite Fanny, the guard officer had been staring at the 2 women in front of him with a stern face, and no one knew what he was thinking. Mo was distracted by Fanny and busy with other things. Mainly, she was checking Nanling's condition with Liji. When she knew that Nanling was in seclusion and preparing to try to form a golden elixir, she breathed a sigh of relief. When he comes out of seclusion, I will make him look bad. As soon as she thought of this, thunder suddenly roared on her body. The next moment, countless thunders climbed onto her body, making her like a goddess bathed in thunder. The guard officer's face changed, and he stepped back repeatedly and said, what does this mean? Mo said lightly, I just feel that I need to break through the realm. Don't worry, the breakthrough has been completed. As she said that, the thunder around her body really returned obediently, and there was no more restlessness. She reached the 2nd level of the golden elixir easily. Fanny asked in surprise, how did you break through the realm? Didn't you say you had to wait? Suddenly she remembered something, and the flames around her suddenly rose, and her whole person's momentum expanded to the extreme. But the amazing thing is that even though the momentum of the flames seemed fierce, it never burned the sofa she was sitting on. The flames only burst out for a moment, and then they returned to her body. Fanny smiled and said, we have to break through. Otherwise, what if we can't beat him after he forms a golden elixir? The 3rd level of the golden elixir. Fanny easily reached the 3rd level of the golden elixir. Breaking through the realm is as easy as drinking water. This situation also brought great psychological pressure to the guard officer. Fanny then looked at him and asked, why are you so nervous? Mo said lightly, of course he has to be nervous, because his search warrant has not been approved yet. In other words, all his actions here so far are illegal operations. The guard officer's expression changed immediately, and he said firmly, of course we have a search warrant. Fanny laughed and said, okay, I'll wait. However, just as the guard officer was about to say something, his face suddenly changed and his whole body trembled, and then he looked at Fanny with horror. Then he gave the order, and all the guard robots quickly retreated from all parts of the Fanmoling building. Boss, why are you asking us to retreat? A dissatisfied voice came with the return of the robot. The guard officer said, shut up, we leave now. He had already given the order and turned to leave. His back looked a little embarrassed. However, he stopped after taking only 2 steps, because he saw that all the mechanical guards he brought with him turned their guns in a twisted way and pointed them at the 3 of them. He could see that these mechanical guards were overloaded with black smoke and electric light jumping from time to time. Their bodies were trembling and the motors in their bodies wanted to resist their actions, but in fact they could not resist at all. Sir, we can't control ourselves. AI's voice calmly narrated a terrible fact. The guard officer turned around suddenly and saw Mo standing there elegantly, with one hand facing forward and the palm open and raised upward. However, in this elegant body, the terrifying magnetic field radiated, forcibly controlling all the machines present, even if the coating on their bodies had anti-electromagnetic interference function. Fanny said lazily, I've already told you to wait a little longer. You can leave only when your search warrant arrives. The guard said coldly, that's impossible. I advise you not to stop us from performing our duties. Mo said coldly, then I also advise you to calm down. After all, federal law stipulates that residents have the right to use force to protect their property from infringement. Even if you are from the guard team. Fanny added at the right time, you can call all the guards to see how long it takes for us to wipe them all out. She smiled a little evilly. and the next moment, many three-element system defensive weapons suddenly appeared around the building, all aimed at the person in the middle. She was shocked herself, and quickly asked Liji beside her, "Sister Liji, when did we install these things in our building?" Liji's prosthetic body did not appear here, but just said in the group, "Of course it was your Xiaonan baby who worked with me to make the 9th emergency plan." Fanny's mouth twitched and said, "Very good, your emergency plans have reached double digits, right?" Liji replied, "That's not the case, because he thinks this is just a building after all. It would be a waste to make more emergency plans, and the ultimate guarantee still depends on one's own strength. So his latest emergency plan is to find a safe passage that can quickly return to the Zhuoxia, well, maybe more than one." "Very good, this is not called an emergency plan, the new plan is called safe passage." Mo couldn't help but look down at her feet, wondering where the thing that was a spendthrift was under her feet. "I really want to drag him out and beat him up. This money is spent like water, no matter how much dowry she has, she can't bear it." However, the guard officer of the guard team could no longer hold back, and he said, "What do you want?" Fanny turned to look at Cao and asked, "You followed them all the way, you should know our losses, right?" Cao immediately bowed and said calmly, "To answer the young lady, they almost smashed the kitchens of every store, and the total loss is about 20 million. The shop owners watching nearby were instantly terrified. How much did their own store lose? Although the loss was heavy, it would only be less than 10 million if factored up. This housekeeper Cao is really evil, but this made them feel much better. After all, they thought that the money Fanny would get would just fulfill her promise of double compensation. Boss Fanny is really trustworthy and generous. But they underestimated this young lady after all. Fanny was not sensitive to such numbers at all. She waved her hand and said, "Okay, let's make it an integer, 100 million. Give me 100 million as compensation, and I will let you go. It doesn't matter if you can't come up with it now. Just sign a debt contract." Everyone gasped, "Is this how you round up the number?" Chapter 329. The 12th Spiritual Array. Nan Lin, through Liji's transfer, watched helplessly as the guard officer above him was blackmailed by Fanny until his face turned purple and he became furious. But unexpectedly, under the strong pressure of Fanny and Mo, the guard officer actually paid the money. And he paid the full amount. As expected, he was a person who came to the RGE family to guilt himself. He really had no shortage of money. Nanling knew that the guard officer of the RGE family was going to return quickly to investigate the situation of the RGE Bell Counselor's home. Until now, they only noticed the abnormality because they couldn't contact the counselor for a long time. It was really funny. It seems that the RGE counselor kept his little secret too well. It seems that I can have more time. He breathed a long sigh of relief. At this time, he was already at the 12th level of foundation building. However, it was not the 12th level of the spiritual A constructed with thunder spiritual power as he originally planned, but it was constructed with water spiritual power. The spiritual power transformed by the golden elixir of a 5th level Jindan cultivator was indeed enough for him to complete this step and even fill the remaining spiritual power into the spiritual array. He wasted no effort in this process, and he wasted an unknown amount of water spirit power. Who made him completely unprepared to draw the water spirit array? He could only keep trying and making mistakes. Fortunately, he succeeded in the end. After consuming 70% of his water spirit power, he finally completed the 12th level of foundation building. The remaining 30% of water spirit power was injected into the spirit array, filling the spirit array to 80%. Although the spiritual power that entered Nanling's body was definitely not all of that Jindan cultivator, if it was calculated in half, this 30% of spiritual power was equivalent to 15% of the spiritual power of a Jindan 5th level cultivator. In other words, this spiritual power could not even fill up one of Nanling's spirit arrays. He had discovered that as the number of spirit arrays he stacked increased, the spiritual power that the upper spiritual array could accommodate was also constantly increasing. It was like if his 12th level water spirit array was full of spiritual power at this time, its total amount would be equivalent to 1.5 times that of the 11th level fire spirit array. This time, his water spiritual power exceeded his fire spiritual power. But what Nanling was in trouble for now is that he was about to lose his state of mind, but he had not yet drawn the thunder spirit formation that he had prepared for a long time. This was really frustrating for him. If Mo knew that he had been in seclusion for so long, and when he came out, he saw that there was no thunder spirit formation but a water spirit formation that he had never seen before, he would definitely be resented to death. Fortunately, he found that the foundation of his body was really well built. If he squeezed it, he should be able to squeeze in another spirit formation. No, it would be better to adjust the wind spirit formations at the bottom, so that he could make more room for the thunder spirit formation. At the time, he began to make fine adjustments with his own strong control. This was to make a move on the foundation that had already been built, and it was definitely something that no one had ever tried. His own control could control all the wind spirit formations, and the fire spirit formation and water spirit formation that were added later were all controlled with the help of the fire wing flying sword, a spiritual treasure. In other words, it was the power of the fire wing flying sword that helped his fire spirit formation to lift up the water spirit formation. This was very important, because the 11th and 12th layers of the spirit formation were too heavy, and he could not take care of them while adjusting the 10th layer of the wind spirit formation. Fortunately, he did it. After adjusting the wind spirit formation properly, the spirit formation system in his body was reshaped. This foundation has become more solid than ever before. He even had a feeling that in this situation, he could only think about it. But he had to stop this thought, otherwise he would miss the planned thunder spirit formation. At this time he woke up from his meditation and asked, "Sister Liji, how long has it been?" Liji said, 3 days have passed, and the two ladies are extremely worried. Nanling was surprised. 2? Liji said, "Yes, your sister and wife know, needless to say, she has been worried about you." The heartless Fanny also started to worry on the second day, because she felt that it was just to form a pill. How could it be so difficult? By the way, I heard that you were in seclusion to form a pill, and Thongshit decided to go into seclusion as well. He also went there the next day, and now the news has just come that he has succeeded, and he is continuing in seclusion to consolidate it. Nanling was speechless. Well, forming a pill is indeed not a difficult thing, but his current situation is a bit complicated, so he thought about it and said, "Please connect the communication in, I will explain to them." The next moment, he saw the images of Mo and Fan. Mo immediately looked Nanling up and down, and seeing that he looked normal and even better, she breathed a sigh of relief and asked, "Did you encounter any problems?" Nanling smiled bitterly and said, "It's okay, it's just that my realm is a little bit difficult to suppress. Now I'm going to wipe the Thunder Spirit Array, which may take some time." Mo misunderstood. She didn't expect Nanling to secretly turn the 12th floor into a Water Spirit Array. She just thought that he really couldn't suppress his realm. She knew very well the pain of suppressing the realm, so she said, "Forget it if you can't suppress it, it doesn't matter." Nanling shook his head repeatedly and said, "No, I can do it, don't worry." Seeing that he was fine, Fanny was not so worried, and said casually, "Then hurry up, I've been going to challenge the club every day these 2 days and it's getting boring. The industry did win a lot, but what's the point of those things?" Nanling was speechless again after hearing this. "I don't know if the Food First Consortium was bullied and cried." He said, "It's fine if they follow the rules. We are not afraid of them anyway." Then he casually asked about Fanny's recent gains, and was speechless. What about the biological preparation company, the energy industry, and even 2 raw material planets? Fanny won back all these things. Nanling almost broke through on the spot without suppressing his realm. He hurriedly asked Liji, "Sister Liji, what is left of the Food First Consortium?" Liji said lightly, "There is only one industry left, Toshizai." "Very good, this is precise tailoring, and the target is completely focused." Nanling asked in confusion. "Then these people didn't make a fuss? After all, they lost so badly." Liji said, "They didn't care, after all, you scared them." And what happened in the room of Councillor Yaji was made public. There are many people in the Yaji family who are willing to trip him up. Now he is called the Devil Counselor. Even the entire Yaji family has suffered serious reputational damage. Who dares to jump out and make trouble now? Nanling nodded. In this way, his goal was achieved. He said, "In this case, the Food First Consortium has been abandoned by all parties." He was relieved. There was no trouble in the outside world, and he could break through it. Peace of mind. Chapter 330. Ancient Alchemy. Nanling began to prepare for the construction of the last layer of the spiritual array, and then completed the unprecedented 13th layer of foundation building. To be honest, he was only 90% sure now. He originally wanted to reach 98%, but he didn't expect an accident. After all, he didn't expect that he would be forcibly sent a wave of water spiritual power, and then he didn't control his thoughts and directly turned the 12th layer of foundation building into a water spiritual array. As for the difficulty increase brought by the 13th layer of foundation building, the so-called 1 method is mastered, and 100 methods are mastered. After he understood this principle, it was actually not a problem. With a thought, the thunder-winged seed blade flew in front of him from the side with great spirituality. This was his preparation for the 13th layer of the Thunder Spirit Array Foundation. He had never used this thunder-winged seed blade since it was made. He nurtured it every day and completely refined the thunder spiritual power in its spiritual furnace. So this era is convenient. If it were an era of serious cultivation, Nanling really couldn't think of how to get such a spiritual object that can serve as an external pill so easily. The spiritual power was drawn out from the thunder-winged seed blade, and then it was drawn bit by bit according to the pattern of the Thunder Spirit Array that he had constructed thousands of times in his mind. This process was not difficult, but the difficulty was how to avoid the influence and interference of other spiritual powers in the body. He could suppress the interference of the Fire Spirit Array with the Fire Wing Flying Sword, but the interference of the Water Spirit Array, he thought about it and chose to suppress it with the Wind Spirit power. But this way, it was impossible to completely isolate the interference. He had to continue to draw the spiritual array under interference. This was also where he was not sure. But fortunately, although there were some difficult to control problems, it was finally successful bit by bit. There may be flaws, which is inevitable, and it is impossible to achieve perfection. And when the Thunder Spirit Array succeeded, a loud thunder sound came from his body, and he began to draw electricity from the surroundings involuntarily. A strong magnetic field was generated around him. Is this the feeling of a thunder messenger? Nanling felt something in his heart again. This was completely different from the lightness and ease of the wind. The feeling of the thunder magnetic field was too dangerous and too strong. He felt that he had to be careful in handling the weapon. For him, the wind is more gentle and obedient, while the thunder is powerful but irritable and difficult to control. As for which is better, it depends on one's own opinion. At this time, Nanling suddenly felt fortunate for his choice, because he felt that if he slept with Mo in the future, if Mo accidentally failed to control his magnetic field, he would probably die on the spot. So he must have a magnetic field to protect himself. Very good, his rigorous character began to flare up again. He even couldn't wait to start adjusting his magnetic field state. Well, it was adjusted in a completely opposite way to the magnetic pole of Mo's magnetic field. This is not rebellion, it's science. After all, opposites attract, right? However, when he was about to infuse the spiritual power in the thunder-winged seed blade into his thunder spirit formation, he found that something was wrong with his body. It should be said that he could not control his realm at all. The pressure brought by the 13 spirit formations began to produce a chain reaction, which was like the birth of a star. Nanling wanted to continue to control the structure of the spirit array in his body and make some fine adjustments. After all, he thought that the water spirit array and the thunder spirit array had not been filled yet. Wasn't it time to break through? But he never thought that his perception would be proven to be correct. The spirit array is only a sufficient but not necessary condition for Dan formation, and it is definitely not the root of Dan formation. When his willpower sank into his body to check his condition, just the next moment, the concept of self-existence in his body, that is, Ki, suddenly rolled back his will and essence in Danton and melted together. At this time, the fire of essence that he had ignited long ago was burning fiercely. With Danton as a forge, the three elements of essence, energy and spirit began to melt into one in the forge. And those spirit arrays were like shackles, exerting 13 layers of pressure on the Danton in the process of forging, so that the three elements of essence, energy and spirit in Danton could be more closely integrated. Nanling discovered a secret, that is, Dan formation is really as he expected, and those spirit arrays are not needed. He only needs to adjust his own spirit, energy and spirit, and adjust his physical state to the peak of balance, then he will naturally be able to use human beings as medicine and Danton as a furnace to refine a humane golden elixir. As for the spirit array, this is a unique idea of this era. The spirit array system of this era did not touch the fundamentals that Nanling understood, but it miraculously did the same thing. That is to use the pressure created by the 10-layer spirit array to force the three elements of spirit, energy and spirit in the human body to merge without the body's understanding. This kind of fusion is obviously going to have problems, but all these problems were suppressed under the suppression of the 10-layer spirit array, allowing the golden elixir breakthrough to be completed smoothly. It can be said that this is a breakthrough in a technique. It is related to one's own perception and understanding of practice, but the relationship is not too big. As for what such a golden elixir should do in the future practice, Nanling can already understand that this is to sort out the three mixed forces in the golden elixir bit by bit. The rest are minor details, and self-sorting will be the most important task. If you can't understand this, I'm afraid that the practice of the golden elixir stage will be very difficult. Similarly, this kind of foundation building actually did not really build a perfect foundation. It might not be visible when a golden elixir is formed, but it will have a great impact when the elixir breaks and becomes an infant. Of course, that is not the stage he can reach yet. He is now busy with the perception of the golden elixir. His main consciousness has completely sunk into the golden elixir. At this moment, he only feels that his body has become a dispensable shell. He has a strange sense of isolation, as if his body has become another kind of compact armor, wrapped outside his golden elixir and consciousness. He even looks at his body from a third-party perspective, and he himself, in his perception, has turned into a small, bright golden elixir, slowly rotating in his Darton. The elixir formation was successful, and it can even be said to be an unparalleled success. It can be said that it was done in one step. The entire golden elixir is extremely solid, and there is no sign of instability at all. In other words, he can directly skip the step of consolidating cultivation. He calmed down for a while, and then couldn't wait to come out of retreat. He was now full of desire to share, and wanted to share his feelings with the girls at this time, and also ask them what they felt when they were in the golden elixir realm. In this new realm, he needed an experienced driver to guide him. Fortunately, he had 2 experienced drivers. Chapter 331 How much have I missed? I'm out of retreat. Nanling came out with a confident smile. He wanted to show off, thinking that he was now a Jindan cultivator. However, what he faced was Mo's encouraging smile. Well, it's good to have a Jindan. There didn't seem to be much surprise on his face. Nanling felt very puzzled. Shouldn't he celebrate after having a Jindan? As a result, Fanny cheerfully revealed the truth. Don't be discouraged. Although you are the last one to have a Jindan among us and it took you the longest time to have a Jindan, it doesn't mean that your potential is bad. Come on. Nanling. ... He finally realized one thing, that is, in this era, talent and potential are often related to the age of Jindan and the time it takes to have a Jindan. The age of Jindan is not too important. The real indicator should be the time it takes to have a Jindan. He felt bitter, but he couldn't say it. Calculating the time, he spent a total of 20 days in retreat this time, but in these 20 days, he completed the 12th and 13th levels of foundation building and Jindan in one go. Is it so shameless? Forget it, it's nothing, what else can he say? Then he was about to share his experience in cultivation, but Mo coughed and said, Xiaonan, we have a gift for you. Nanling was surprised, what gift? As a result, he was shocked to see that the copyright of a series of recipes had been transferred to his name. He asked, Toshizai. Fana smiled and said, not just Toshizai, now all the industries of food first are under our name. Nanling said, is it possible? Mo said, originally it wasn't possible. Didn't you go to the Jajbel's house and make a fuss before, and directly expose the fact that he ate humans at home? Now everything related to Congressman Yajbel has become a sensitive matter, and Food First is instantly isolated and helpless. Li Ji said, their shareholders hoped to rely on those gyms to turn the tables at first, and they were able to beat us 2-1 at the beginning, but later when Thongshi also successfully formed a pill, they had no hope at all. It's not just Food First's industries, those gyms have lost a lot of inheritance to us. Nanling said in surprise, I was only in seclusion for 20 days, how come so many things happened? He saw that everyone looked very calm, as if to say, you know how much you have missed now, right? Nanling shook his head helplessly and said, well, if that's the case, then Shui can just give up the gym route first. Why will he hand over all the industries to us? Fana said, who knows? Those old guys suddenly wanted to sell all the shares to me. I was too lazy to bargain with them and agreed to the price. It's only 4.5 billion anyway. I've asked my dad to transfer the money. Very good, Miss Fanny, who is not short of money, is really too lazy to save money for her father. Mo answered in detail. In fact, it is the benefit after you kill that Senator Yaji. Not to mention the controversy caused by the demon senator, the most crucial thing is that there is a 5th level Jindan cultivator below who was killed with one blow. I don't know what the results of the investigation by the masters of the federal parliament are, but from the fact that the Yaji family chose to keep quiet, it can be seen that they're afraid, or at least don't want to cause trouble. In addition, the demon senator incident forced the Yaji family to completely abandon the power of Yajibal, so the Shuishan consortium related to Yajibal has become the target of common sniping by all parties. If they can withstand our challenge, it would be fine. At least they have demonstrated their strength to temporarily suppress those lurkers. but they can't suppress us, so we kill them fair and square. Nanling had already thought of the next ending after listening. He said, so then the Food First Consortium encountered a situation where everyone pushed down the wall, and they had to sell shares and assets to survive. At least those shareholders will try their best to maintain their wealth. And in the face of the unanimous exploitation of others, the generous price offered by Boss Fanny instantly touched the hearts of those people. Mo nodded and said, that's it. Nanling looked at Fanny as if he was looking at a spendthrift woman. He said, Mo, I'm not saying that she spent money lavishly, you should also watch her. Fanny immediately retorted, it's really strange that a man who spends money lavishly starts to despise others. Nanling said unhappily, I spent all the money I earned, most of it, well, a lot of it was also given by Sister Mo. But the money I spent added up is not as much as what you spent at one time. Fanny crossed her arms and said with disdain, the money I spent was all given by my father. Who made my father rich? Nanling retreated instantly, he couldn't afford to offend the eldest lady. He calmed himself down, and then said, okay, I'm going to make all these copyrights public for free, I don't want to make money from this. Mo nodded, she knew this would be the result. So she said, then I'll talk to Gao, and all the smart kitchens produced by Toshizai will be able to make these dishes for free in the future. Nanling was quite surprised, he asked, is Toshizai run by Gao now? Li Ji said, in fact, the entire industry that was originally Food First was run by Gao after it was purchased. Fanny said, the dead girl King Fei is right, this Gao is indeed a very capable person, I can rest assured to hand over these unimportant things to him. Nanling said with emotion, in that case, your move may be regarded as a stroke of genius. Fanny asked, oh? Any explanation? Nanling said, the Food First group has already been involved in the field of bioengineering, pharmaceutical preparations and even military preparations. Aren't these contents just in line with what Uncle Gichen is doing? In fact, we can discuss with Uncle Gichen and develop his biological preparation industry here. It just so happens that Food First has all the qualifications it should have, which can save a lot of trouble. Fanny nodded again and again when she heard it. Yes, this is the industry bought with that money. I will ask him later. Nanling decided to reduce direct contact with Gichen. He found that Gichen seemed to have changed some of his ideas after breaking through to the nascent soul stage, so he decided to keep a distance and observe carefully. Next, Nanling couldn't wait to share his cultivation experience with Fanny and Mo, and discuss it. He had some ideas about the practice of the golden core stage, but he was not sure, and he needed a sample reference. Chapter 332. Golden Elixir Cultivation. Nanling shared his insights with the girls, and also learned from them their insights on cultivation. Their insights on cultivation were also very important. After all, they were different from Nanling, who had completely deviated from the path. They were still following the cultivation methods of this era. Nanling needed to learn from them. When he reached the Jindan stage, he was actually a little lost and panicked. Let's talk about the main cultivation of the Jindan stage first. I always feel like I don't understand it. He asked. Fanny laughed and said, I knew you would ask us. I'll tell you straight. The so-called Jindan stage cultivation is essentially to continue to strengthen the foundation you laid when you built your foundation. In short, it is to materialize the spirit formations in your body one by one in order. The materialized spirit formations will be able to provide Jindan practitioners with more powerful spiritual power. Look, it's like this. As she spoke, a flame spirit formation suddenly appeared behind her. No, not just one, the second, third and even the fourth one appeared. Wow, she has already reached the fourth level of Jindan secretly. This speed is really fast. However, just as she made the move, Mo beside her hesitated for a moment, and 3 thunder spirit formations quietly appeared behind her. Wow, they were just at the first and second levels a while ago, and they broke through 2 small realms in such a short time. Mo said, we originally wanted to suppress our realm, but it seems that suppressing our realm in that Jindan stage has no benefits. In addition, there is nothing to do during this period, so we practiced seriously. She seemed to say it lightly, but in fact, she was worried that Nanling would not have an advantage in her cultivation after the Jindan stage. In her relationship with Nanling, she was used to being the one who had the advantage and provided protection. Fanny's mentality was similar. Nanling didn't know that it was his progress that made Mo and Fanny start to roll up. He just said with emotion, so that's the case, but what good is this for Jindan? Fanny and Mo were stunned, because they all practiced according to the previous methods, and they knew they had to do this but it was difficult to figure out why they did it. Mo, on the other hand, thought a little more. She hesitated and said, I thought about it after I came into contact with your theoretical system. This should be the effect of accelerating the refining of external spiritual power to feed back to itself. At the same time, the stronger the golden elixir is, the more spiritual array entities it can withstand, and the spiritual power refined by the spiritual array entities can continue to strengthen the golden elixir. In this way, the practice of the golden elixir period can be continuously promoted. Nanling asked in disbelief, is it that simple? Fana confirmed, it's that simple. Of course, you can have some different personal insights, but it's actually that simple. Nanling asked, but why do some people practice quickly while others have difficulty making progress? Fana said irresponsibly, it's a matter of talent. How can I explain it clearly? Mo pushed her, then involuntarily took a step forward and said, why, do you have something special you want to share with us? Nanling nodded and said, I'm starting from my understanding and comprehension. What I see is the adjustment of the inside of the golden elixir. Fanny was stunned. The inside of the golden elixir? Isn't the golden elixir just the golden elixir? Don't scare me. If you mess around like this, something bad will happen. Nanling was stunned for a moment, then said speechlessly, that's better than you breaking the golden elixir yourself, right? Fanny was speechless for a moment. Indeed, when it comes to messing with the golden elixir, others have no say in front of her. Mo said with concern, the inside of the golden elixir? According to your theory, it is the combination of the three elements of essence, energy and spirit, so the inside of the golden elixir you are concerned about is actually these three elements. Nanling nodded, it seems that Mo really paid attention to this aspect. He said, from my feeling, the strength and balance of the three elements of essence, energy and spirit when forming the elixir are the key to determining the innate state of the golden elixir. Before forming the elixir, you have all tried to ignite the fire of essence and energy, and you have also paid attention to cultivating ki, so the composition of the three forces inside the golden elixir should be very good. No, I have to find another sample to study. Nanling began to mutter to himself. Then he suddenly thought of a good candidate. He said, where is the master of Yangtze Sword House? Mo asked, are you going to call Gye as well? Nanling said, yes, his talent is not that good, and his experience can just serve as a reference for me. Mo nodded and said, the message has been sent out, and he will be here soon. But he asked if he could bring his disciples with him. It seems that he really respects you and regards this as an opportunity. Nanling didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard this. He said, let him send a few suitable disciples over. His eldest disciple Rongshi is also a good research sample. Mo just nodded when he heard this, but Fana reacted with a turn of her eyes. She said, you didn't treat me as an experimental sample too, did you? Mo glanced at her lightly and said, you just realized it. This guy has always used us as his first experimental subjects. Fanny was so angry that she almost exploded. Nanling shrank her neck on the spot. But then he came to his senses and said stubbornly, what's the matter? If you are not satisfied, I will tell Sister Mo. Fanny became weak at the time. She pulled the corner of her mouth and showed an awkward but polite smile and said, how can I not be satisfied? I just think you can be bolder in the future. If you have any ideas, let Gye and others try it first. Good guy, is the master of Gye consumable? While waiting for Gye and his disciples, Nanling also began to try to refine those spirit formations. His skills were originally obtained from the wind domain, but later he stopped reading them because he had deviated from them. Now he reread the cultivation methods of the Golden Core realm, and it was basically the same as what Fanny and Mo said, all of which were the cultivation of those spirit formations. According to the description of Jin 4, he should now be considered the Golden Core 0 level, because only after the success of the Dan and the refinement of the first spirit formation can it be considered the first level of the Golden Core, which is also considered to have completed the stabilization of the realm. But his Golden Core is completely different, so there is no need to refine another spirit formation to stabilize the realm. The Golden Core is so hard that it can even hit people. But he thought the way the spirit array materialized was also very interesting. Why did it feel like a Western magic array? And, he felt something in his mind and reached out to tap his Fire Wing Flying Sword. The Fire Wing Flying Sword had completely transformed from a spirit to a virtuality as his mind flashed, and then was swallowed into his stomach. The spirit of the small sword flew around the golden elixir happily, becoming an embellishment in Nanling's elixir field. And this process of transformation from a real object to a virtuality is exactly the opposite of the process of the spirit array materializing. He always had a feeling that everything changed but remained essentially the same, as if he had touched upon something more fundamental. Chapter 333. The mouth that persuaded everyone to secluded. Nanling began to share his own Tao in his own small circle. In fact, this is not a Tao, but only a method, but at least it is more advanced than the arts of other people in this era. As for the Tao, that kind of thing that is hard to explain, Nanling only has some understanding but can't really say why. But even so, it is already fascinating. Especially Gyue, he had a sudden enlightenment and said, "So this is how it is, so it has to be done this way." Nanling asked in surprise, "Excuse me, what did the master use? I understand?" Gyue smiled bitterly and said a little shyly, "That is just the trouble of people like me with dull talents. I'm afraid that Master Nan and the two ladies will not encounter it." Nanling said, "Although you were a cultivator of the 5th level of Jindan, a pioneer among us." Gyue said, "Okay, then I will present some of my own shallow views." He was a little too humble. In fact, Nanling still valued this ordinary cultivator. Gyue then shared, "The bottleneck that has been bothering me for a long time is not how to refine the spirit formation, but how to make my golden elixir withstand this spirit formation. The spirit formation helps us to form the elixir, but when I continue to strengthen the spirit formation, the increasing pressure will continue to be exerted on the golden elixir until it reaches the limit it can withstand. This is my bottleneck." He smiled bitterly and said, "Just like before, I and my disciples listened to Master Nan's teachings, and we had already had great insights and were ready to try to break through to the next level. But I didn't expect that the golden elixir had reached its limit, so I didn't dare to continue trying and could only give up." He became excited at this point and said, "But I didn't expect that Master Nan would also mention the concept of composition and balance in the golden elixir, which made me suddenly enlightened." I. He was a little excited, but also a little confused. Because although he knew the theory, he still had no idea how to do it specifically. Of course, this is much better than before, at least he has a direction to work hard. Nanling smiled upon seeing this and suggested, "Let me give you a suggestion. Don't simply inject your spiritual will into the golden elixir. That will cause an imbalance. You should feel your own essence as much as possible, and then inject the essence and spirit into the golden elixir together with it. Use the connecting force between essence and spirit. There is no need to rush it. If there is essence and spirit, there will naturally be ki. But the next step is to sense your own ki, because it is the key to reconcile and coordinate essence and spirit. It is also that key to achieving balance and even continuous strengthening inside the golden elixir." Gyue nodded in agreement. He bowed again and said, "Thank you for your advice." Mo and Fanny also had their own thoughts. When they were reminded, they suddenly realized that there was a reason why they could make rapid progress during the golden elixir period. Mo said, "Perhaps I can continue to improve my realm quickly until the tolerance of the golden elixir reaches its limit. But this tolerance obviously comes from the foundation accumulated during the foundation building period. In that case, I have to think about it carefully, otherwise I will be no different from ordinary golden elixir cultivators, just progressing faster." Fanny nodded repeatedly. She also thought so. She had previously thought that her rapid progress was normal, but she did not expect that Nanling's research could indicate the principle of this speed of progress, so she could not be confused anymore. She and Mo both comprehended the mystery of ki first, which was already far ahead of Gyue. Nanling's research after entering the golden elixir also showed that this was their real reliance, so naturally they had to grasp it tightly and continue to study it in depth. Fanny asked, "Then I'm very curious, what exactly is your golden elixir like?" Nanling was stunned for a moment, hesitated a little, then opened his mouth and spit it out directly. Everyone was stunned. Because Nanling directly spit out a golden and colorful treasure pill as big as a fist. When he spat out the golden pill, his aura suddenly weakened, and his whole body shrank a lot, and his eyes instantly became lifeless. He held the golden pill in his hand like a puppet and said mechanically, "It's like this." Fanny was stunned for a moment, and Mo panicked. She hurriedly ran up and held his hand holding the golden pill and said, "Why did you spit it out? Put it back, put it back." Fanny also reacted, ran over and hurriedly tried to open Nanling's mouth. Nanling was speechless at the time. His golden pill suddenly flew into the air, and then the surrounding wind spirit power quickly gathered to form a human-shaped phantom. "Don't be nervous, I'm fine, I just left the main body of my consciousness in the golden elixir." Everyone looked at Nanling's golden elixir in surprise and then looked at his physical body. Gyue exclaimed, "This is impossible. The golden elixir is extremely fragile. Once it leaves the human body, it will collapse. Master Nan, your golden elixir. Nanling felt that he might have done something wrong, so he got back into his body and said, I don't know about this. It may be because the structure of my golden elixir is very stable. Anyway, I'm not afraid. But you can't leave your body for too long. After all, something will happen if you leave your physical body to nourish it. Mo breathed a sigh of relief and said, Anyway, this is too dangerous. Don't do this in the future. Do you understand? Nanling nodded quickly to show that he knew. And Fana said curiously, Your golden elixir, even if the body dies, as long as the golden elixir is still there, you can completely be reborn in the shell. Nanling looked at Fanny in shock at the time. He didn't expect her to say this. The key seems to be really feasible. He said, That makes sense. If I clone my body with my own cells, and then put the golden elixir into this clone, but it should be very troublesome. After all, my current body has been tempered by thousands of times. It takes too much effort to restore my body to its best condition. It is impossible to think about using someone else's body. Not to mention that Nanling himself feels uncomfortable. The other person's body is full of concepts of existence that are not inferior to his own, which is extremely troublesome to deal with. It should be considered for clones, but he is somewhat resistant to this idea in his heart, perhaps because of his life experience. Their exchange of experiences is indeed a great benefit to everyone. So much so that as soon as Nanling came out of retreat, he sent Mo, Fan and I, and even Gui and others to retreat. Really, Nanling didn't know what to say. He wanted to come out of retreat to make it lively, but it became quiet again. He was speechless. And now the whole special zone seems to be in a panic, but in fact, the Fanlim building is as stable as an old dog. No one dares to offend this group of people. After all, this group of people can really use fists to make sense and never use mouths. So now Nanling is bored all of a sudden. Let him participate in management as a board member? Don't be ridiculous, how could he have that talent? Just when he was bored and seemed to have no choice but to continue his retreat to consolidate his realm, he received a message asking for help. Brother Nan, I can't hold on any longer. Lu Lai came to ask for help. He looked exhausted and unable to deal with his own troubles. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 334. A visit to the Ghost Seafront. Nanling received a commission from Lu Lai. Well, he temporarily took on a job as a battlefield consultant. Why this job? Lu Lai was desperate and had no other options. He could only turn to Nanling for help. After all, Nanling was the only one willing to help him. As for why Nanling agreed, well, he was an unlucky person who was dominated by sunk costs. If he didn't care about Lu Lai, the initial investment would really be sunk. And Lu Lai could actually become a very important part of his layout in the Star Federation. Well, this layout didn't exist before, but this time when he came out of retreat, he found that almost all the industries of the entire Food First Consortium were transferred to the name of Fan Lin, which made him realize one thing. This condition is too good. Now they have directly owned the capital of a consortium, and Yangs and Jianzhou can be regarded as a heritage gym controlled by them. If Lu Lai can supplement the military strength, then in addition to the political status, wouldn't it be that all the elements of the family are complete? Maybe he didn't have this idea originally, but when he saw that so many conditions were already in place, he had to consider the possibility in this regard. Their purpose in the Star Federation is to create another place where they can get shelter. And what is faster and more effective than becoming a clan of the Star Federation? Even the administrative stars are ready-made, and those raw material planets that originally belonged to Food First are the best administrative star options. At the time, as long as appropriate policies are introduced, it will definitely attract some people who are not doing well in other places to settle down. The composition of a clan, the consortium is the financial guarantee, the army is the conventional security guarantee, the gym inheritance is the high-end military guarantee, and the political status can be regarded as the right to speak. These four combined into one is the clan. Of course, Nanling thinks that the so-called right to speak is not that important. As long as the strength is strong enough, others dare not provoke it. High-end force and general force are the most important. Therefore, Nanling attaches more importance to Lu Lai. I'm going to Lu Lai's elk fleet once, and Fan Lin will be left to you, Sister Li Ji. That's right, only Li Ji can be entrusted with the heavy responsibility, and the others have gone into seclusion. Li Ji said indifferently. Don't worry, I'm just responsible for handling some daily affairs. External social events are Cow's job, and if there is really any trouble, Fan and I and Mo can also come out of seclusion. But do you really want to go to that kind of place? That's not a good place to go. What if you encounter danger? Nanling smiled and said, I'm a Jindan cultivator now. I have some confidence in myself. At worst, I can fly back by myself. Indeed, he was full of confidence in himself. As long as he didn't meet a Yuning strongman, he was confident that he could escape under any circumstances. After escaping, as long as he had enough materials, he could create a heavy fusion reactor, and then use it to build his own spaceship. With a spaceship, he can fly back through hyperspace. Except for a little trouble, there is no technical difficulty. Li Ji said. Okay, remember to keep in touch. As a digital life, she also wanted to provide remote assistance to Nanling. Nanling smiled and said, Don't worry, I will. He packed his things and headed for the airport with a light suitcase. There was already a small cargo ship waiting for him at the airport. This cargo ship came back to purchase supplies and took him there. But what he didn't expect was that the cargo hold on this cargo ship was empty, as if there was nothing. Please find a seat and sit down anywhere, Mr. Nan. As you can see, it's very empty here. Nanling found a place to sit down as he was told, then looked at the driver who had spoken and said, Are you here to pick me up? The driver said, Let's just say that. Nanling shook his head and said, Then I can't think like that. It seems that the morale of Brother Lu Lai's men is very low. We have to use this method to boost morale. You are one of Brother's trusted subordinates, right? The driver turned around and looked at Nanling in surprise, and said, How did you know? Nanling said, You should be planning to publicize internally that this ship is full of prizes or comfort items. There are not many such things in history. The driver was at a loss for a moment. He didn't know what history Nanling was talking about, but this didn't stop him from thinking that Nanling was a very powerful person. He said, Mr. Nan is really amazing. No wonder my uncle wants you to be a military consultant. I hope Mr. Nan can help us with our difficult situation after he arrives at the front line. Nanling smiled and said, I won't interfere in your affairs. I'm just here to help you solve some problems encountered in the use of our company's weapons at the request of Brother Lu. The nephew of Lu Lai looked a little disappointed, but he still thanked him politely and saluted, then drove the spacecraft to start quickly. He looked very anxious. Nanling was a little moved. This Lu family member might have been a second-generation ancestor, but now he seemed a little humble. Sure enough, people have to go through some things to grow up. Nanling stopped talking and thought about his own things quietly. In fact, he was sensing the situation inside his golden elixir. He always felt that although his path was completely different from the cultivation method of this era, it was actually not wrong. He wanted to seek further inside, and he also wanted to know what kind of changes his three powers of spirit, energy and spirit were undergoing in his golden elixir. This feeling was very wonderful. He felt that he seemed to be nurturing something. And because his main consciousness is in the golden elixir, is it nurturing itself? The profound understanding is beyond words, and even in hyperspace flight, he can't stop comprehending. Until the next moment, the whole ship shook, and he opened his eyes again and asked, Are we there? The nephew of Lu Lai nodded and said, We're here. Nanling stood up and looked around from the porthole, only to find that the terrain here was very strange. In front of him, there was a substance like white fog covering the entire star field in front of him. Nothing could be seen where the white fog was dense, and the sparse places were like spikes piercing into the dark void. Is this the Ghost Sea? It looks like some kind of dark matter cloud. Nephew Lu Lai said, This is an extremely stable ultra-high energy level aggregation phenomenon. We call it white cloud. It is also a unique phenomenon in the Ghost Sea. It itself is not dark matter, but some kind of dark matter has restricted these horrible ultra-high energy level substances into their current form. As for what the dark matter is, if we can figure it out, then it is not dark matter. Nanling sighed, unknown things always account for the majority in this universe. Then won't this white cloud have accidents like explosions? Nephew Lu Lai said, Of course there will be, but it only happens very rarely. The dark matter that wraps the white cloud is very stable. As long as you don't touch it, there will be no problem. And even if you accidentally touch it, it will only cause the touched matter to be instantly ionized. Nanling's eyebrows jumped when he heard this. This is really dangerous. Chapter 335. It turns out that they're soliciting sponsorship. The ghost fortress where the elk fleet was stationed was located in a gap in the white cloud. The fortress was located in a nebula of rubble at the gap. The gap seemed very narrow, but it was actually filled with asteroids of different sizes. Nanling just saw this phenomenon and realized something and said, "The gravity here is abnormal. These asteroids don't seem to have dispersed." Nebulae said, "It's caused by the binding force field of dark matter. In fact, it can only roughly affect the asteroids in this area. There'll still be many rubbles hitting the white cloud." Before the voice fell, Nanling saw such a scene. An asteroid with a diameter of about 20 kilometers hit a spike protruding from the white cloud. The asteroid instantly exploded as if it was detonated by a high-energy bomb, releasing extremely strong light and heat. Nebulae said, "At the moment of contact, the part that touched the white cloud was ionized. In fact, this is the result of anything touching that thing. Even the most advanced starship would be useless." Nanling nodded in agreement. He said, "Excuse me, what's your name?" Nebulae introduced himself. "My name is Lu the 11th, a major pilot of the 8th Fleet of the Elk." Nanling nodded and said, "Hello, Lu the 11th, can you tell me where Brother Lulai couldn't hold on? I'll have a general understanding first, so that I can get into the state earlier when I get there." Lu the 11th hurriedly said, "It's still those people in the Ghost Sea. They drive their ridiculous spaceships to constantly attack our defense line, which puts a lot of pressure on us." Nanling asked unexpectedly, "Are the casualties heavy?" Lu the 11th said, "The casualties are not heavy, but the problem is that those biochemical people are simply cannon fodder that can't be killed. They drive simple boats to attack our defense line and never think about going back alive. And we have to pay a greater price to deal with them, constantly wasting the already stretched supplies." Nanling thought this situation was so similar to the scene in the game. "I think it's quite interesting." So he asked again, "Are the people in the Ghost Sea usually so crazy?" "No, if they were so crazy, Brother Lu wouldn't have been so free when I first met him." Lu the 11th shook his head and said, "No, they are usually very peaceful and rarely come to the Ghost Fortress to make trouble, but this time they attack like crazy. I don't know what medicine they took wrong." Nanling said thoughtfully, "There is a possibility." Lucia's expression moved, but when he saw that Nanling didn't say anything more, he actually resisted asking, but just silently moored the ship, and then said to Nanling, "Mr. Nan, please, Uncle should have been waiting for you for a long time." Nanling walked out of the transport ship, and the first thing he saw was a slightly old hangar. This was in Lulai's flagship. Although it was old, it was at least cleaned very cleanly. He just walked to the hangar passage and saw Lulai hurried over with a haggard look. "Brother, you are finally here." He opened his arms and gave Nanling a big hug. Nanling was a little surprised. Although they called each other older brother, they were not that close in reality. But he noticed Lulai's expression. The expression of someone trying to grasp the last straw in his dying struggle was really too uncomfortable. So he did not resist, and took the opportunity to hug Lulai and said, "What's wrong, brother? Is the trouble really that big?" Lulai stiffened for a moment and said, "It's more than big, I simply can't hold on any longer. Supplies are running out, and the morale of the soldiers is low. I don't know how long I can stabilize them, but even if I can stabilize them, I don't have enough supplies to stop those biochemical people in the Ghost Sea." Nanling asked, "Why, are you afraid of close combat with them?" Lulai said, "They are all crazy people who don't care about their lives, and one less soldier here is an irreparable loss." Nanling understood, and he said, "So brother, your biggest problem now is the lack of supplies, right? But if there is a lack of supplies, what can I do?" Lulai scratched his head awkwardly, and just said, "No, although the supplies are running out, we can still hold on for a while. This time I actually want to invite you to visit our defense line." Nanling understood instantly. "You want me to continue to invest in you for a long time? But in this case, shouldn't you show me more confidence?" Lulai smiled bitterly and said helplessly, "Because I know the situation here cannot be hidden from you, it is better to be directly honest." Nanling sighed lightly after hearing this, and then said, "Okay, then let's visit the Ghost Fortress here as requested by brother." Lulai said, "Well, Lu the 11th will take you around, and we will show you the most real side. If you think we can still be saved," Nanling said solemnly, "don't worry, brother, I will not stand idly by." Lulai said, "Well, Lu the 11th, you take my brother Nan to the suite to rest first, and then take him for a good look here after a day of rest." Nanling nodded, said goodbye to Lulai, and watched him leave in a hurry. Then he looked at Lou the 11th and said, "Lou the 11th, let's go, show me your fortress." Lou the 11th said in surprise, "Aren't you going to rest first?" Nanling said with a smile, "I'm a Jindan cultivator, why do I need to rest? Or do you feel tired?" Lou the 11th quickly cheered up and said, "Since Mr. Nan wants to see it, please follow me." As he said that, he came to the side of the hangar, drove an open-top floating car and said, "Mr. Nan, please get in the car, we will go in this car." Nanling nodded, and then Lou the 11th took him to start the journey of inspecting the ghost fortress. This process is not worth elaborating. The speed of the floating air vehicle is not slow, which is enough for Nanling to quickly see the many defensive facilities of the floating fortress. After reading all this, Nanling's first feeling was, it's hard to imagine that a fortress like this would encounter the trouble of falling in this kind of terrain. Lou the 11th nodded and said, "Yes, as long as there are enough supplies, our elk fleet will block this place and it will never fall." Nanling said in surprise, "But the federal fleet was almost wiped out." Lou the 11th gritted his teeth and said, "That group of idiots actually thought that the people at the Ghost Sea were really defeated and were led into the gap in the white storm cloud, and were surrounded and annihilated by the enemy who had been prepared for it. If not, how could these guys attack here so recklessly?" Nanling did not comment on this, but just said, "Okay, take me to see what you really want me to see. I have seen the foundation of the Ghost Fortress, and I roughly understand what you mean, brother. Then let's get to the point." Lou the 11th was a little embarrassed after hearing this, but he still took a deep breath and said, "Okay, it's stupid to be petty in front of Mr. Nan. Please get in the car, Mr. Nan, we have a 10-minute drive." Chapter 336. Poverty Alleviation Through Technology. Nanling was taken to the back of the Ghost Fortress, where there were several asteroids bound by gravity, each with some huge facilities. Lou the 11th took Nanling into this area and asked mysteriously, "Mr. Nan, can you tell what these are?" Nanling said, "They are all heavy fusion reactors, there are 2 large reactors and 8 medium reactors. But since you have these things, you shouldn't be short of supplies." At this point, his mind had already roughly scanned it, and then he said solemnly, "Only 3 medium reactors were turned on, no wonder you are short of supplies. The material generation speed of the 3 medium reactors cannot keep up with the cost of the entire base." 11 smiled bitterly and said, "There is nothing we can do about it. When we were replaced here, there were still 5 medium-sized reactors that could be used, but the others were already unusable." Nanling asked in surprise, "Is there no money for repairing facilities in the fleet budget?" 11 said, "Yes, there is, but who would really use it for this? And as more and more reactors are damaged, the gap is getting bigger and bigger, and naturally no one is willing to invest money in this area anymore." Nanling understood their difficulties. Because some of the key parts of this heavy fusion reactor are actually very high-tech and sophisticated, and they can never be made by hand using a simple production line. He asked, "Then with Brother's connections, we should be able to buy spare parts, even if we have to pay for it ourselves." Nanling believed that Lai would not be entangled in this issue at this time. As long as he could hold on, everything would be fine. 11 said, "No one is willing to provide us with these things. Let's not talk about the family. Forces outside the family can sell them, but the price is expensive and there are conditions attached." Nanling understood everything. He said, "It seems that Brother Lai wants to borrow our name of Fan Olin to get these spare parts." He pondered for a moment, and then sent a message to Lai directly, saying, "I understand what you mean, but I have a new product here, brother, do you want to take a look?" Lai unexpectedly received a series of introductory materials from Nanling. He asked in surprise, "What is this, a refusion reactor?" He looked at the huge thing in the information and was amazed. Nanling confirmed, "The planetary-scale refusion reactor is developed by our Fan Olin's exclusive technology, so you don't have to worry about being strangled." Lu Lai asked, "Is this expensive?" Nanling said, "It only costs the price of a technology license, and then I will build it for you for free. The only problem is that you may need to dismantle some of the original reactors to use as raw materials." Lu Lai was silent for a moment, and he said, "Completely different from the current reactor technology." Nanling said, "Completely different. I can tell you clearly that we developed this planetary-scale reactor because we could not solve the problem of high-precision and high-tech parts of conventional reactors. We chose another way of thinking. We no longer pursued high-precision and high-efficiency when expanding the reactor. This is actually a technological regression, but we found that when we enlarged this reactor to a certain level, the efficiency of the reactor began to catch up with conventional reactors. And we only need a simpler structure to achieve even more stable operation. This is the charm of size. Nanling finished their story of great strength creates miracles with emotion. After hearing this, Lu Lai finally made up his mind. He asked, how long would it take? Nanling said, give me the control of your 3 medium-sized reactors. It will only take 2 days. He was full of confidence. He was already very familiar with this process. If he didn't want to hide his incompetence, he could have built a reactor by himself with his current state of possessing both the Fire Spirit Array and the Thunder Spirit Array. Lu Lai said decisively, okay, just 2 days. If it takes more, the supply of materials in the fortress will be directly broken. Nanling was calm about this. He said, trust me. As soon as he finished speaking, he had obtained the authority. He took 10 seconds to receive all the information in these authorities, and then began to issue commands quickly. The entire reactor area became busy all of a sudden. Although it was busy before, the working speed was not comparable to the current one. Nanling fully exerted his computing power and demonstrated the operation ability of the Galaxy Fairy Champion. Lu Lai originally agreed to Nanling's request with the mentality of treating a dead horse as a living horse, but now he was really shocked. This operation speed is too amazing. One command after another, even several or dozens of commands are issued at the same time, making the entire reactor area start to operate at high speed and efficiency without any chaos. Lu Lai asked in astonishment, brother, you actually have this skill? Nanling asked back, brother, is this strange? Lu Lai said, this is amazing. If someone here can do this, I won't worry about supplies. What kind of operation ability is this? Nanling asked unhappily, haven't you played Galaxy Fairy? Lu Lai said, it's just a game. Although the name is loud, we are all professionals and don't look down on that kind of game. Nanling. ... he said faintly. Then I'm very sorry, my operation ability is all trained in this game, and I can tell you that the fleet of the Ancient Domain uses this game to train fleet commanders. Lu Lai was silent for a while. He didn't expect it to be like this. Then he smiled bigly. It seems that I am really old and can't keep up with the pace of you young people. Nanling said indifferently. Don't worry, you can't do it now, but I'm here now, and I'll get better soon. He felt like he was helping the poor and helping the poor with technology. It was really a friendly help. In addition to the copyright, even his own labor was given away for free. And it was under this circumstance that the parts of the planetary scale heavy fusion reactor were manufactured rapidly. This reactor really has no technical content. As long as the raw materials are sufficient, and then the most basic thing is to be able to meet certain precision requirements. Just like this, Nanling used the existing materials and some parts removed from the old reactor to quickly build a reactor with a diameter of 10,000 meters in 2 days. This is a planetary scale reactor, as big as an asteroid. And when this reactor was running steadily, the production capacity that burst out in that instant directly made Lu Lai cry. It was really not easy for him these days, and now, he finally saw hope. Chapter 337 Military Advisor. The planetary class fusion reactor was completed. Its completion immediately raised the material and energy production capacity of the entire Ghost Fortress to an extremely exaggerated level. The originally dim fortress suddenly became brightly lit, and the facilities that were originally closed to save energy were reopened. The momentum displayed by the entire fortress is no longer the same. Nanling felt that since he had already done this, he might as well set up some computing power allocation formulas for these guys who had little operational ability. Although this would waste some computing power and appear to be more rigid, it is better than those people who are slow and can't do anything. Lu Lai is now completely convinced of his little brother. Seeing his material warehouse visibly full, he is full of confidence in the current battle situation. After setting up his own program, Nanling got up and returned to Lu Lai. He said, how about it, brother, is the money spent this time worth it? Lu Lai nodded repeatedly and said, worth it, super value. He gave a thumbs up and praised generously. Nanling felt something was wrong, and then realized that Lu Lai actually didn't spend any money at all. He has always owed it. At this moment, Nanling suddenly understood how Mo felt when he owed him such a large sum of money. Then he really had to be careful to take care of Lu Lai, because who would pay him back if something happened to him? But wouldn't Lu Lai be the host in this case? Nanling began to think about the relationship between him and Lu Lai. He would not test human nature, but that didn't mean he wouldn't think about human nature. Now Lu Lai was desperate and would only regard him as a lifeline, but what if this crisis was over? Nanling put himself in Lu Lai's shoes and felt his embarrassment. Even if this crisis could be safely passed, Lu Lai would not be tolerated by the Lu family, at least in the short term. This would be a victory for him alone, but it would be a failure for the Lu family. First of all, the Lu family's plan to drag other families into the water failed, but this was just a small setback, not even a loss. The real failure was that the abandoned tribe survived with their own strength. Then these surviving tribesmen are the biggest challenge to the family's prestige. But this is not irreparable. If the Lu family can open their arms to accept Lu Lai and others again and have the courage to admit their mistakes in front of Lu Lai, then an old man like Lu Lai who grew up under the grace of the Lu family will definitely put aside his prejudice and return to the Lu family. Of course, in that case, the money that Nanling lent can be returned, and he can even make a lot of money, but his investment from another perspective is a failure. Is Nanling short of money? Well, he still lacks it, at least he is still heavily in debt. But he really doesn't care about that money. What he cares about is the hidden value of Lu Lai. Nanling smiled reservedly and was not modest. He just said, "Speaking of which, have the changes in the Ghost Fortress caused any changes in those biochemical people?" Lu Lai said with a cheer. "They were scared. They have retreated. I guess they will not dare to come and fight again." He was complacent, as if he had overcome the difficulties. But reality seemed to love playing tricks on him. When he finished speaking, a piercing alarm sounded on the bridge of the flagship. The biohumans in the Ghost Sea came again. They once again passed through the wide storm cloud channel of countless asteroids and rushed towards the Ghost Fortress and the Elk Fleet. This was like a loud slap, slapping Lu Lai's face hard, making him extremely embarrassed. Nanling unexpectedly glanced at the Ghost Fortress, which was already brightly lit under the flagship, and then looked at the fleets around that were gradually replenishing supplies, and he was a little confused. Damn it, our fleet hasn't finished replenishing yet, how dare they? It was indeed a bit critical. Because Lu Lai had already ordered most of the fleet to return to the Ghost Fortress to line up for rest, it would be a bit hectic to line up to meet the enemy at this time. Nanling calmly reminded him, "Brother, give the order quickly, at least give the order, otherwise your men will panic." Lu Lai forced himself to calm down, and he quickly ordered, "Hurry up and organize the defensa." Nanling covered his face. How could the people below execute this unreasonable order? He quickly said, "Reorganize the fleet. Those who were already replenishing should not rush to leave the port. The ships at the end should first build the first layer of defense and prepare for rotation and rest." Lu Lai nodded repeatedly and gave orders again. This time his fleet understood a little bit, at least it really built the first line of defensa. But the order was still very rough, and those ships that were defending were panicked, and those ships that were replenishing were also uneasy. Because there was no definite information about such an order, it was really difficult for them to settle down. Lu Lai was also overwhelmed, because the situation in front of him was really complicated for him, and he really didn't know where to start. God has mercy on him. He was originally just a second-generation ancestor, at most an old second-generation ancestor. He was only a major general after a lifetime of gilding. He was in charge of the most inconspicuous 8th Fleet under the Lu family. If he had the ability to suppress the situation, how could he still be a major general in his 70s? So he couldn't help but look at Nanling for help again. Nanling rubbed his head helplessly at the time. He began to doubt whether his investment was correct. He had been reminded to this extent. He said, "Brother, after all, I'm not legitimate." Lu Lai said decisively, "No, I still have to rely on you, my brother. You are the military advisor I hired. If you issue orders on my flagship, it is equivalent to me issuing orders." Nanling still hesitated. Lu Lai was more anxious than his younger brothers on the front line. He said, "Brother, don't hesitate any longer. I'm really not that kind of guy. If you don't take action, I don't know how many more soldiers will die in vain." Nanling was convinced by him, mainly because he didn't want to see the Elk Fleet suffer too much loss. So he nodded and said, "That's overstepping your authority." He got the authority. And then, a completely different style was revealed. The first thing he did was to notify the fleet stationed on the front line of the rotation time. Just this one notification immediately made the front-line fleet burst out with a completely different combat power. It was visibly more energetic, and the defense line was immediately stabilized. Then he informed the end time of the ships that were resting and replenishing, and clearly marked the time range for each link of the rotation. Have the people of the Elk Fleet ever seen such a command style that was clear about everything? But it is undeniable that under this style, everyone couldn't help but tighten up, because they clearly knew what they should do at the moment and what work they had to do afterwards. The entire battle situation was stabilized at the moment. The role of an excellent commander was immediately apparent at this moment. The champion-level command and operational capabilities of Galaxy Fairy also made ordinary fleet soldiers of this era feel amazed. Chapter 338 I am ordinary. Nanling's command ability revealed the tip of the iceberg at this moment. Why is it called the tip of the iceberg? Because in the eyes of the uncle and nephew Lulai and Lu XI, this man who commanded the entire battle can still slowly order a cup of coffee from the service robot. Nanling took the coffee and took a sip. It's so bitter. He was speechless for a moment. He originally wanted to imitate the elegant posture of Miss Fenyu when commanding the fleet, but he didn't expect that the coffee of this era is so bitter. What's wrong? He suspected that Fenyu needed this bitter and refreshing drink to keep his attention focused to avoid mistakes. Nanling quietly put down the coffee. He didn't need this because he was really at ease. Commanding this standard-sized fleet cannot fully exert his computing power. He is used to commanding thousands of troops in the Galaxy Fairy. What's more, he has now successfully formed a pill, and his computing power has completely gotten rid of the shackles of the flesh brain and reached another level. He can even take care of the production in the rear fortress while commanding the defense line. Countless robots kept coming down the assembly line to help the supply and rest work of the Elk fleet. He worked with the most perfect resource allocation, and the entire Ghost Fortress was completely alive in an instant. Under this vitality, the entire Ghost Fortress was stimulated to use all its functions, even 120% of its functions. In this case, not only was the front line stable, but the resources in the base were also visibly increasing. Nanling finally suppressed the inertial thinking of expansion, and then turned his attention to the Elk fleet. He ordered, all ships should conduct self-inspections, and the results of the self-inspection should be summarized to the flagship. He decided to put his idle computing power into operation. So the fleet's self-inspection reports were sent over, and he saw at a glance that most of these old starships were in a state of disrepair. He asked Lulai helplessly, "Don't you know how to maintain your fleet?" Lulai said with embarrassment, "No way, who knows when we'll really go to the battlefield? I thought simple daily maintenance would be enough." That's really, these starships look huge and scary, and they are dangerous weapons of war, but in fact, if they are not well maintained, they will become a pile of scrap metal in a short time. Nanling said, "Okay, it looks like I have to make another rotation plan by the way." He selected the best ships and formed another fleet, so that they entered the dock for overhaul after a rotation operation. He said, "These 4 ships are in the best condition, they can be repaired the fastest, and they can last for a long time after they are repaired and restored to performance." At this point, he turned his head to look at Lulai and Lu XI, wanting to get some positive feedback from their faces. Unfortunately, he only saw a kind of ignorant trust. As if to say, "Why are you telling us this? Just play by yourself, we trust you." Nanling turned his head and rolled his eyes. He could only comfort himself. At least it is much better than building a fleet from scratch. So he did one more thing, which was to make a maintenance plan for each starship of the Elk fleet. For the sergeants of the Elk fleet, they felt as if they'd met a god. The god must have replaced the brain of their fleet commander, otherwise how could they get such a command that could be accurate to the maintenance team? This is too magical. Anyway, this kind of god-level command is beyond their imagination. Lulai just watched Nanling issue one command after another, and then his fleet was rejuvenated with amazing vitality. And as time went on, his fleet not only did not suffer any loss, but also continued to adjust its status to a peak state that had never been reached. 10 days, a full 10 days. The biochemical offensive of the Ghost Sea was endless. But all the ships of the Elk fleet have been completely renewed, as if they had been restored to factory settings. More importantly, each sergeant quickly absorbed nutrients under Nanling's command, and their execution and personal abilities were incomparable, just like the real elite. Lulai couldn't recognize his subordinates. Are they really the people he was familiar with? Nanling didn't think it was a big deal, after all, he just let these people do their jobs. Lulai watched his defense line become indestructible. Nanling even modularized many command modules for him, so that he only needed to select the module command according to the corresponding situation to easily deploy the defense line. "Brother, you are really amazing." He couldn't help but admire. Nanling said indifferently, "What's the big deal? Almost everyone in our team can do this kind of thing." Lulai was stunned and asked quickly, "Can you introduce your team to me?" Nanling smiled and nodded and said, "I won't mention it, I just know a little bit of everything," he said modestly. Then he said, "Thongship, another male member of our team, is a natural guardian. He not only has outstanding operational capabilities, but also specializes in defense organization. In fact, in a situation like the current one, he will definitely do a much better job than me." Lu Lai felt a little bit unbelievable. Could it be that there are so many capable people on the Zhuoxia? Nanling continued, "Next, I want to introduce you to my wife Ling Yino. She also knows a little bit about everything, but she is more inclined to connect and organize military formations. If you want to launch a full-scale attack, she will be the best commander." Lu Lai nodded after listening. He had no feelings about this at all, so he could only listen and give up. Then Nanling said, "I want to focus on introducing Sister Li Ji. She is the strongest scout of our team and also the strongest logistics organizer." Lu Lai knew that this was a digital life, and it was not surprising that she could do this. He asked, "What about Miss Fanny? What is she good at?" Nanling said, "Boss Fanny, she is good at charging into battle and commanding on the battlefield. It can be said that as long as she appears in front of the battle, it often means a brilliant victory." Lu Lai nodded and asked, "Then where do you rank among the 5 of you?" Nanling smiled. He thought for a moment and said, "In terms of defense organization, I am not as good as Thongship. In terms of commanding on the battlefield, I am not as good as No. In terms of logistics organization, I am not as good as Li Ji, and charging into battle is far worse than Fan." Lu Lai felt a little stunned. It sounded as if Nanling had no merits. But if you think about it carefully, you can find that Nanling is comparing with others in terms of their strengths. In other words, Nanling is only slightly weaker than the strongest in these 5 aspects. This is a balanced strength. Lu Lai felt that he understood, and then said to Nanling with emotion, "Brother, you are really too modest, but everyone in your Zhuoxia team is really talented. No wonder they are valued by Mr. Fox, the operating officer of Galaxy Xiang." Nanling shook his head and said nothing more. Lu Lai also changed the subject and said, "It's strange to say, why don't these biochemical people give up? Obviously, there should be no hope of victory. Why are they still attacking in vain?" Nanling listened and said meaningfully, "Maybe they only need to drag us here to achieve their most fundamental goal." Lu Lai was shocked when he heard this. He was forced by the situation before and had no time to think about this problem, but now he has the leisure to think about it, but he feels a sense of horror when he thinks about it carefully. Chapter 339 Familiar Taste. Why did the biochemical fleet of the Ghost Sea attack the Ghost Fortress without regard for their lives? This matter is extremely terrifying when you think about it carefully, because it is an extremely unreasonable thing in itself. But if you insist on finding a reason for this unreasonable thing, then the meaning is profound. At present, the only interstellar armed force in the Federal Special District is the Elk Fleet, right? Nanling reminded. Lu Lai nodded and said, "It is indeed the case at present, because all the families are waiting for me and my fleet to be defeated. Before we are defeated, they will wait and see." Nanling curled his lips. "This is really great," he said. "In that case, the entire Special Zone Starfield is a vacuum zone, with only some security guard ships shuttling between the major space stations, or private armed forces. Think about it, did the Federation lose something very important during the previous raid on the Ghost Sea?" Lu Lai immediately widened his eyes, then realized and said, "Those attackers were not able to really escape after they succeeded. Yes, their spaceship was directly blown up at the time. Even if there was a small escape pod, it might not be able to sustain long-distance navigation. So, the lost thing is still in the Special Zone Starfield, but no one has looked for it." Nanling asked curiously, "What was lost?" Lu Lai shrugged and said, "Who knows, that thing should have been in the hands of the Aja family. They are best at doing business, and even all the fearless merchants in the Ghost Sea are related to them. It should be that some merchant was reckless and got something extraordinary in the Ghost Sea, which caused this crisis." Nanling nodded when he heard this. Lu Lai's guess was still well-founded. At this time, he could not help but ask another question in his mind. But since it was the Ghost Sea that took action, why did the digital life Xi Ping, who was originally guarding the Juntan space station, join in the fight? I really can't think of the connection between them. This kind of news had nothing to do with him before, but now that he has decided to intervene in Lu Lai's affairs, he might as well ask clearly. Lu Lai is really not very good in terms of military ability, but he is well informed about these upper-level matters. He said, "I just heard that Xi Ping's favorite granddaughter is almost 300 years old. Even if Xi has invested all his income in the past few years, the existing technology at the Federation can no longer extend her life. Nanling said, "Brother, you mean that Xi did this in order to obtain the biological technology at the Ghost Seed to extend the life of his granddaughter, but why didn't he perform human body transformation on his granddaughter?" Lu Lai said, "I don't know, maybe he doesn't want his granddaughter to follow his old path again. There are many quirks of this kind of digital life, which are difficult for outsiders to understand." Nanling nodded silently and didn't ask more questions in this regard. He could understand a little, because he helped Li Ji become a digital life, and naturally knew that becoming a digital life was just the first step towards loneliness. If their anchor point in the human world disappeared, they would most likely end up as pathetic cold AI. No matter how smart it is, no matter how powerful its computing power is, it can only be regarded as AI without human emotions. Nanling asked the information he wanted to know, and then gave Lu Lai a piece of advice. "Brother, although you can breathe a sigh of relief now, please don't let your guard down. You have to think carefully about your future." Lu Lai is not stupid, he can even be said to be experienced in this regard. After there was no imminent survival pressure, he immediately realized it after being reminded by Nanling. His face suddenly became solemn, and then he smiled bigly. "Even if I am vigilant, what can I do? I don't have many choices. It would be great if my family could accept me again." Indeed, since the Lu family could make the decision to sacrifice a fleet in exchange for dragging everyone else into the water, how could they choose to welcome Lu Lai back? Nanling sighed. Originally, he wanted to suggest that Lu Lai accept Fan Molin's employment after solving this matter. This was definitely a good place for Lu Lai to go when he was desperate and in debt. But he softened his heart after all, and he didn't really think highly of this kind of conventional force in his heart. After all, as long as he was given time, he could build a fleet by himself. So he said, "I'll give you one last piece of advice before we leave." Lu Lai immediately sat up straight and listened. Nanling said, "Raise the enemy to protect yourself." Lu Lai was stunned. He didn't quite understand because this word was a little too old, as if it was an obscure allusion picked out from ancient documents. Nanling added, "That's right, delay it as long as possible, and don't stop asking for help from outside." Lu Lai's eyes became brighter and brighter. He understood, and even had a deep understanding. Yes, since no one wants to get involved in this mess, then isn't he a rare commodity from another perspective? Lu Lai was greatly inspired, and he couldn't wait to say, "According to the Garrison Act revised 600 years ago, if I can resist foreign enemies for 3 months with the strength of a fleet, I can choose to retreat at any time. Then there will be a big show." Nanling was quite surprised to hear this and said, "There is such a bill. You have been holding on for 2 months, right?" Lu Lai said, "Yes, this bill was originally my only hope, but now it seems that it can be used to make a big fuss." Nanling nodded and said, "Then congratulations in advance, brother, this is indeed the key to breaking the deadlock." Lu Lai looked at Nanling and said, "What are you talking about, brother? If it weren't for Fan Moling and the support you provided, we would have collapsed a month ago. The other authorized weapons are expensive and not easy to use. Fan Moling's weapons are inexpensive. Otherwise, we wouldn't have persisted until now." Lu Lai sighed. He didn't expect that his accidental acquaintance with Nanling would become the key to saving his life. He looked at Nanling and said seriously, "Brother, if I can survive this difficult time, I will never forget your kindness." This was a solemn statement, which was a kind of predetermined covenant. Nanling nodded and flattered to accept the covenant. However, he didn't mind this kind of thing in his heart. He did help in times of need, but could Lu Lai really do "don't forget each other when you become rich and powerful"? Nanling would not expect this, and of course he would not doubt it. After all, it was just a casual move. Now the Zhuoxia team, or the 4 golden pills and 1 digital life of Fan Molin, is the real foundation of their strength. The weight of the Zhuoxia in his heart is far higher than that of Lu Lai and his fleet. Nanling boarded the spaceship that sent him back. Originally, Lu the 11th wanted to see him off, but he refused. After all, it was just a short hyperspace trip, and nothing should go wrong, right? A small spaceship left the busy Ghost Fortress and entered the void. Just as it was safely flying in hyperspace, the alarm in that cockpit suddenly rang. Nanling opened his eyes in shock, and helplessly found that he might have been infected with Fanny's bad luck. It was an old-fashioned medium-sized starship, which had captured his route with incredible accuracy while he was flying in hyperspace, and crashed into him. This was really a familiar smell. Chapter 340 Direct Negotiation. Encountering the enemy again in hyperspace made Nanling feel very bad. This mode of transportation was too unsafe. And this time there was no one around him, and the feeling of insecurity instantly reached its maximum. Fortunately, he was able to maintain consciousness in hyperspace, otherwise he would have been captured in such a muddle. He was troubled, but his consciousness shrank in the golden elixir and did not dare to investigate too much. He did not want to be exposed to a large amount of information at this time. He just ordered the spacecraft through the intelligence core to eject the spacecraft from the hyperspace flight. However, to his surprise, this command was not sent out, because his intelligence core and even his spacecraft system were locked. It really seemed that he was going to capture him alive. In the past, Nanling might really be helpless, but now, he did not hesitate at all. According to his understanding of this spacecraft, he used the spirit formation in his body to directly create a high-voltage arc and hit the control console fiercely. Boom! A cloud of smoke burst out from the control console in front of him, and then the entire small spacecraft lost control and fell out of hyperspace. The rapidly approaching starship obviously did not expect Nanling to be so decisive, and it only chased him out after a short pause. Nanling fell out of the hyperspace, and at that moment, his divine consciousness surged out of his golden elixir, taking over the control of all the equipment on the spaceship at the first time. This was a void with nothing in it, which was normal. Without any hesitation, he kicked open the front window of the spaceship and got out of it, while reaching out to take the briefcase beside him. The next moment, the briefcase opened, and his pure color faith immediately spit out from the folded space inside. While the pure color faith covered his whole body and two pairs of red and blue wingsuits quietly emerged behind him, the medium-sized starship chasing him also rushed out of the hyperspace. Nanling had no intention of running away when he saw this, because he had rigorously analyzed the possibility of his escaping with the wingsuit, and the probability was extremely low under the premise that the other party had a starship. The only way was to take advantage of this time, when the shield level of this spaceship was the lowest just after it emerged from the hyperspace, and directly kill it. The two pairs of wingsuit spiritual treasures, the Fire Wing Flying Sword and the Thunder Wing Seeing Blade, lit up their own spiritual lights, and Nanling coordinated the wind spiritual power in his body. Then another long spear popped out from his palm. Long Cybernetic spear. The moment the starship appeared, the moment of pause, Nanling's eyes seemed to pass through the heavy armor on the bridge and saw a line of sight looking at him. Then he waved his gun forward without hesitation. 3-point return to the original energy. This is a proper 3-element attack. The fire spiritual power, thunder spiritual power and wind spiritual power are combined into one, releasing amazing killing. In theory, Jinn and cultivators can indeed intervene in the interstellar battlefield, but that is only when they have to, because the attacks that can threaten a starship are often launched when they are desperate. But Nanling's attack at this time does not seem to be difficult. Using 3 spiritual treasures together, it is as easy as an ordinary attack. Boom! The 3-element attack landed on the starship's shield, and 3 different conceptual forces exploded in a complementary manner, rapidly weakening the starship's shield until it shattered like a soap bubble. Then the 3-element attack landed on the starship's hull, and the outer armor continued to melt and turn inside out, and then was pierced and even penetrated. Nanling did not stop releasing his spiritual power until the 3-element attack directly penetrated the entire hull. To be honest, this kind of pure blessing and conceptual spiritual power release is very powerful, but the consumption is also really high. He was equivalent to releasing 3 high-level spells in one breath, but these losses were not so severe because of the sharing of 3 spiritual treasures. The tearing of wind, the swiftness of thunder, and the purification of fire. When these 3 spiritual powers come together, the effect of the aggregation is equivalent to the lethality of 9 high-level spells. Boom! The starship was blown up on the spot. But Nanling's eyes immediately narrowed slightly, and then looked at a small spaceship that flew out from the starship at the moment of the explosion. Sure enough, but don't even think about running away this time. Nanling didn't hesitate at all and decided to chase after it. The thunder and fire wings behind him spread out and immediately followed the trajectory. At the same time, Pure Color Faith received a communication from Li Ji. "Shannan baby, what's wrong with you? I detected that your spaceship appeared outside the scheduled route." Nanling said. "It was ambushed in hyperspace." Li Ji was shocked at the time and said, "I'll call them all out, and we'll use the Zhuoxia to rescue you." Nanling said, "No, I can handle this matter myself, don't disturb them from their retreat." His tone was heavy. In fact, as his strength increased, he was ready to face his own destiny. If the oracle could really see his fate. Nanling snorted coldly and flew towards the spaceship. At this moment, a mechanical voice came to his ears. You can't defeat me in a space battle, even if you were an ace pilot. Nanling was surprised and suddenly said to himself, are you still invading my intelligence core? The other side responded, once on Chugiv Star and once on Jumton Space Station, you shouldn't expect your chaotic information flow to work on me. Nanling shook his head helplessly and said, that's a pity, I didn't get the expected target. After the voice fell, he took off his intelligence core and turned it off. However, the other party's voice still rang in his ears. It's useless, your pure color faith also has its own system. As long as you still rely on technological creations, then I can invade. Nanling took off the pure color faith decisively and put it back into the folding suitcase. He was wearing a green warrior suit with aura, and 2 pairs of red and blue wingsuits on his back. The wind spiritual power wrapped his whole body, and he didn't feel any discomfort in the void of the universe. Sure enough, this time he could no longer hear the other party's voice, at least from his own equipment. Of course, he was not afraid of the Black Death Emperor. Of course, this was the Black Death Emperor. Who else would be so diligent in ambushing him in hyperspace? The other party's spaceship rushed towards him rapidly, unstoppable, as if to smash him to pieces. Nanling rushed forward without hesitation with the long Xiangguofen gun in hand, as if any retreat would bring shame to him. In the void, the two collided silently. The long Xiangguofen gun flashed with the concepts of tearing and penetrating, and its strong posture split the small spaceship in half. But before the small spaceship was torn apart, a figure popped out of it. Its silver-white metallic luster, in the light of the explosion of the spaceship, made an impossible turn and came to Nanling's side, pressing his hands directly towards him. Nanling immediately turned back and held the long Xiangguofen gun horizontally in front of him, blocking it and finally facing it. It was a metal skeleton, which looked like an unfinished robot, dragging its incomplete body to move. Nanling complained. You should lie in the oil for a while for maintenance. You'll look terrible now. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 341 The Silent Fate. Nanling and the mechanical skeleton met each other and then smiled brightly. There was a slight vibration of air around the skeleton, and it was obviously saying something, but he didn't listen, and no sound could be heard in this void. Nanling didn't have anything on his body that could be hacked by this thing, and the auxiliary devices in his body had been discharged long ago. But after all, it was a mechanical body, and the strength was really great, and Nanling couldn't bear it. The 2 pairs of wingsuits on his back suddenly fell down like hooks. The mechanical body of the Black Death Emperor retreated violently, and saw a series of sparks on a mechanical arm in a flash. It was the result of being scratched by a piece of lightning wing-seam blade. Nanling sent a gust of wind and said, I think you will lose. He still refused any information from the other side, and turned around to chase after it while swinging the spear in his hand like a long whip. The mechanical body of the Black Death Emperor didn't dare to fight head-on this time. No matter how confident he was, he should know that he was far from being Nanling's opponent in terms of direct combat power. Maybe its former mechanical body was very strong, but this one is not. What Nanling didn't expect was that when he was chasing, the mechanical body could suddenly turn over and shoot a dark green beam of light at him. His heart tightened and his scalp numbed. He immediately turned around quickly with extremely fast reaction speed to avoid the attack. He had a hunch that if he was hit by the dark green beam of light, he would still be seriously injured even with the protection of the spiritual silk-woven robes. Since this digital life dared to ambush him, it must have weapons against cultivators. Nanling chased after it again. But this time he didn't dare to chase too close, always trying to keep a reaction distance. This made the chase very boring. Nanling even suspected that there was a reactor in the mechanical body, the kind that could run for a long time. Helplessly, Nanling reinstalled his intelligence core and turned it on. This meant that he wanted to talk. A wise choice. Sure enough, the calm voice of the Black Death Emperor came to his ears. Nanling said helplessly, "You are very difficult to deal with. At least I can't do anything good to you by myself." He actually wanted to solve the problem completely in one go, and could only sigh that it would be better if Mo was here. Because Mo's magnetic field was strong enough to ignore the opponent's anti-electromagnetic coating, but his magnetic field could not do this. The mechanical body of the Black Death Emperor also stopped. It stared at Nanling, but a voice sounded in his ears. You are very smart and tough, but you shouldn't do things that go against the established destiny. Nanling snorted coldly. How did I go against destiny? The Black Death Emperor said. Recently, Lu Lai and his L8 fleet should have been destroyed long ago. Nanling asked. Did His Excellency the Oracle foresee this? The Black Death Emperor's voice was cold. There is no need to involve His Excellency the Oracle in everything. As followers of the Oracle, we have jointly built a huge and rigorous data model. The birth and death of every human being will be reflected in this data model. And the fate of every new human being will also be intertwined with the data model, allowing us to infer the direction of countless events. Nanling said sharply. So, you have built another deduction system of your own in addition to His Excellency the Oracle's deduction system? What a good life. He was relieved, as if the real Oracle was not paying attention to him. That was great. The Black Death Emperor said, our system depends on the existence of the Oracle. He occasionally gives us some inspiration, just like the burning cloud. Nanling's expression tightened, as if the Oracle mentioned them. He was worried, but his expression was very firm. Then he thought of the flaw and said, as great as the Oracle is, I'm afraid you won't pay attention to our affairs. You must have acted on your own. The Black Death Emperor said calmly, that's right, but our mission as the Silent Fate is to help the Oracle maintain the stability of fate. Any variables should be eliminated. Nanling was relieved when he heard this. He said, thank you for solving my doubts. I think the Oracle has never taken us seriously. Our enemies have always been the so-called Silent Fate. The Black Death Emperor still said calmly, no, the Oracle cares about you very much. He said in front of us with joy. The burning cloud is a very interesting variable. Nanling. ... He felt that this Black Death Emperor seemed to have some problems. Why did he say everything straightforwardly and didn't seem to have any scheming at all? In his opinion, the Black Death Emperor was like an AI locked in by rules and regulations, and was not like the digital life he was familiar with. Although the only sample he was familiar with was Li Ji. And I always feel that through the retelling of the Black Death Emperor, the Oracle's attitude is a bit strange. It's not that the Prophet is distressed when encountering variables, but rather he is quite happy. Nanling said in surprise. Don't you think that your current behavior has violated the Oracle's original intention? The Black Death Emperor said calmly. Your Excellency the Oracle is the incarnation of fate. Protecting the correct operation of fate is protecting you yourself. Nanling suddenly understood the Black Death Emperor's mentality. It and its forces are believers of fate but not the Oracle's subordinates. They follow their own principles and have their own set of theories about the so-called fate, and don't care much about the Oracle's opinion. The so-called Silent Fate is actually a group of fanatics with a distorted interpretation of fate. After Nanling learned about these things, the burden in his heart was completely removed, and he decided to kill this Black Death Emperor. He did not attack directly, but asked, why do you think you can decide the fate of everyone? The Black Death Emperor said, we do not decide the fate of anyone, we only follow that trajectory of the predetermined fate. Before he finished speaking, the pair of thunder wings behind Nanling had quietly closed, and then shot out. The thunder-winged blade, covered with the concept of swiftness, shot at the mechanical body of the Black Death Emperor at a rapid speed. The Black Death Emperor was caught off guard. It barely moved its body, but it was cut off by the thunder-winged blade. But the huge flying sword did not stop. It flashed with lightning and turned around quickly, and continued to stab the Black Death Emperor. If the terrifying sword blade landed, the mechanical body of the Black Death Emperor would be crushed into pieces even if it was made of the best super alloy. However, Nanling's thunder-winged blade paused slightly, because he found that the lower half of the mechanical body that was cut off earlier was also accelerating to escape. This Black Death Emperor is indeed a digital life. Both parts of the body can be used as carriers of its consciousness. I'm afraid that if any part is left alone, it will not be able to kill it completely. Another pair of red fire-winged flying swords behind Nanling also closed together and shot out towards the lower body of the escaping mechanical body. The thunder-winged blade continued to thrust out, crushing the upper body of the mechanical body that had lost its power. Incredibly clean, the upper body of the mechanical body exploded to pieces, and countless parts shot out in all directions. Nanling was stunned for a moment, because he clearly felt that the thunder-winged blade did not feel the impact of the impact, which meant that it was the Black Death Emperor who exploded himself. His divine sense swept over and immediately saw countless small chips scattered in that debris. They were all chips with the most basic data carrying and communication capabilities. Nanling covered his face and groaned, and when he wanted to chase, he found that the scattered chips were almost beyond the detection range of his divine sense. After all, the starry sky is vast, and these chips have an initial velocity due to the explosion. At this moment, he thought about it, and the fire-wing flying sword suddenly pierced the lower body of the mechanical body like a burning fireball, melting it into molten iron before it exploded. This time it just caught him off guard, and the same trick will not work next time. Nanling scratched his head in frustration, and put on his pure color faith and wisdom core again, ready to make a final effort. After all, the detection device on the pure color faith is more useful than his divine thoughts at this time. Chapter 342. Research on the Black Death Emperor. Nanling floated alone in the empty void, feeling so depressed that he almost vomited blood. Why? Because his intelligence core and his pure faith were locked to him and he couldn't use them. This was obviously the work of the Black Death Emperor, and Nanling hated it. He had beaten the other party to pieces, but why did he always feel that he was the one who suffered? Fortunately, he always had an emergency plan. He took out a portable communication module from the suitcase in the folding space, and then connected to Liji's communication. "It looks like you are having a bad time," Liji complained with a strange smile in front of her. Of course she was very happy, but she was quite relieved to see Nanling suffer unexpectedly. Maybe it was because she rarely saw Nanling so embarrassed. Nanling said, "Yes, when I come back, I must make a new intelligence core, and then ask Sister Liji to help me rebuild the firewall for my intelligence core and pure faith. These things are indeed not very reliable, but it is really inconvenient without them." Liji said, "I know. I knew you would need me someday. The Juoxia will be there in 10 minutes. Now you can move aside a little and be careful not to be hit by the Juoxia." Nanling was surprised. "I thought it was just a small spaceship coming. There was no need for the Juoxia, right?" Liji said, "The Juoxia can pick you up as quickly as possible, right? This is more important than anything else now." Nanling stopped talking and successfully boarded the Juoxia after waiting for 10 minutes. Liji's spiritual crystal prosthesis was not here. She just appeared in front of Nanling in the form of an ordinary female prosthesis. "Speaking of which, should we look for the fragments of that guy? With the burning cloud, we can do more." Nanling shook his head and said, "No need, the Black Death Emperor will not be killed so easily by us. I'm even more worried that the burning cloud will be invaded by it." Liji said unconvincedly, "Then you underestimate me too much. How can there be any problem with the burning cloud with me here?" Nanling shook his head and said nothing. He felt that it was better to be cautious in such matters. However, after a conversation with the Black Death Emperor, he was relieved. The big boss really didn't care about the troubles of these young people. It was all the Black Death Emperor and the Silent Fate behind him who were causing trouble. Moreover, this Silent Fate felt strange. He obviously worshipped the Oracle but didn't listen to the Oracle at all. The Oracle's reaction was also strange. At least in the Black Death Emperor's retelling, the Oracle seemed to deliberately show interest in the Burning Cloud team, causing a strong reaction from the Silent Fate. Nanling thought about it and thought that maybe this was the Oracle's bad taste, or a prank. At the same time, he began to review and think about his contact with the Black Death Emperor this time, and input the data into the system of Juoxia, and analyzed it with Liji. He said, "The Black Death Emperor is also a digital life, but it is very different from Sister Liji. Its thinking is very meticulous, but it seems that it can't turn or hide." After understanding the whole process of Nanling's contact with the Black Death Emperor, Liji said in a fearful tone, "It's too scary, it's almost the same as AI. You will find it strange, that's because in the logic of AI there are only can and can, so no matter what you ask it, it will say everything it can. Is this the result of losing the anchor point? When digital life loses its anchor point in reality, it will gradually assimilate with AI." Nanling hesitated for a moment and said, "Can you find out when the Black Death Emperor first started to move?" Liji nodded and said, "This can be traced back to 1,000 years ago. He had already formed the Death Star Pirates at the time and was active in the major star regions of the Star Federation." Nanling asked, "What about the information before that?" Liji said, "That can't be found. Maybe the Special Zone Network originally had records, but it has been completely cleaned up. In other star regions, there are some obvious traces of deletion. Perhaps the Black Death Emperor once deliberately deleted his past." Nanling nodded and pondered. "It started to move 1,000 years ago, and all the traces before that have been erased, so it is very likely that its anchor point has not disappeared." He then gave another example. Siping of Jumpton Space Station, a digital life that was once deeply trusted by the federal parliament, even went to the ghost sea to rebel for his last anchor point, which is his little granddaughter. It can be seen that once the anchor point is lost, it should be a very terrible thing for the digital life. Leiji nodded and said, "Yes, I feel terrible when I think about it. It's unimaginable. But what anchor point can last for more than 1,000 years? Unless that person is a cultivator who can remain immortal for 1,000 years. Or he has super life technology and can completely transform himself into a non-human. Otherwise, the human body cannot exceed the limit of cell division, and it cannot live that long." Nanling knew that this statement made sense. He nodded and said, "Indeed, before the discoveries of the King Shuan civilization, humans had not discovered any way to repair or increase the number of cell divisions. Even if it is cultivation, it makes cells stronger and delays the process. Even the biotechnology at the King Shuan civilization can only repair it once, and there is no way to repair it more than once. It's like a shackle placed on humans by the Creator. If you want to break through this shackle, you can only turn yourself into a non-human." Nanling said this with emotion, and suddenly thought of the Xingcan pioneer seeker of knowledge who had existed for tens of thousands of years. Perhaps he had already turned himself into a non-human during his pioneering journey. No wonder human civilization is only the mother civilization rather than the original civilization to him. He has indeed jumped out of the category of humans. Then he changed the subject and said, "And I guess that the Black Death Emperor's anchor point is probably not human beings, and no one says that he must use others as anchor points." Leiji was stunned for a moment, then nodded in agreement. "Yes, I judge others by my own standards." She was frank. After all, it was nothing shameful for her to treat Nanling as a relative. Then he continued, "You reminded me, if it is not based on other humans as anchor points, then it is based on some kind of belief." "Oh, yes, their Silent Fate is obviously an unorthodox religious group, so it is based on faith." Nanling nodded and said, "It must be so." Leiji said, "That makes sense, this Silent Fate group should all believe in the Oracle." Nanling shook his head again and said, "No, they should believe in fate, and the Oracle should be the embodiment of fate or the closest existence to fate in their eyes. But there is a difference between the two." Leiji sighed, "The brain circuits of these psychopaths are really hard to understand." Nanling couldn't agree more. Chapter 343 Leiji No. 2. Nanling took the Zhuoxia back to the airport outside the Jumpton space station. However, he did not return directly to the Fanmoling building, but stayed on the Zhuoxia to adjust his combat armor. He now found that if his cultivation was sufficient, there was no problem for his physical body to cross the void, but it was too inconvenient. He had to update his combat armor. First, he redid the system of pure color faith and applied anti-electromagnetic coating to it, and then asked Leiji to help make a powerful firewall. Of course, these are not important. Nanling carefully studied the electromagnetic barrier that he had communicated with Mo before. As long as he could set up the electromagnetic barrier, he could theoretically block the invasion of those digital lives. This kind of protection should be prepared more fully, just in case. He had previously focused on his own cultivation and was indeed negligent in this regard. There is also the Wisdom Core, and he should also change the Wisdom Core. Since the Black Death Emperor is no longer afraid of chaotic information, there is no need for him to keep these chaotic information in the Wisdom Core to occupy space and computing power. However, he would not dare to buy smart cores from the market anymore. Concubine Yu King had successfully lowered his trust in those high-level executives who had backdoor access. He decided to make a smart core himself, as long as it was suitable. The intelligence core is still very convenient, and Leiji's firewall is implanted at the same time, but Nanling's new intelligence core started to work, and Leiji's electronic voice came to his ears. "Welcome to use this product, Master Nan, Leiji No. 2 will serve you wholeheartedly." Nanling. ... He looked at Leiji in confusion and asked, "Sister Leiji, did you copy a copy of your consciousness code and leave it with me?" Leiji smiled and said, "This is a backup of mine, a sproutine based on my core code. In case my core code has problems, I can still keep a part of it with you. Besides, having such a sproutine to help you make a firewall is much more useful than making a fool like AI for you." Nanling was stunned for a moment, then nodded heavily and said, "Okay, I will treat No. 2L." Leiji smiled with satisfaction. She was worried that Nanling would not accept her kindness, and now it is good. Nanling wore his new intelligence core on his body. He made it into a jade pendant shape and hung it around his waist, which made him look more classical and beautiful. The function of this smart core is not strong, because Nanling did not add the smart core constant power to it, which is the real core strength of the smart core. He just made some relatively non-technical changes, that is, to increase the computing power of the smart core. In this way, the smart core only needs to do a good job of intelligent information assistance, and even if it is invaded, it will not affect his body. Strictly speaking, this is even a bit like the idea of superbrain transformation, but Nanling did not directly embed it into his brain, so it is impossible to achieve a perfect combination of human brain and mechanical computing power. At least this is enough. Nanling tried to use it, and felt that everything was fine, and connected to the network again. As soon as he connected to the network, he received a communication request from Lu Lai. "What's wrong, brother?" Lu Lai's picture appeared on his retina, and he said with a clear look of relief, "I'm glad to see that you are okay. Your signal was lost for a while before, and we were all worried." Nanling smiled. At least this was someone who was worried about his safety, so he didn't hesitate to smile. "I'm sorry to have worried you, but don't worry, I'm fine." Lu Lai said, "Now that the war is stabilizing, as you said, I should start thinking about the future." Nanling said, "Have you thought about what to do?" Lu Lai said with a gloomy face, "I have thought about it, brother." "Do you have any idea of hiring us at Fanolin?" Nanling was stunned. He didn't expect Lu Lai to be so straightforward and make such a forward-looking decision so quickly. He thought about it for a while, and then said sincerely, "It's naturally very good that you are willing to do this, but from the perspective of a friend, I have to remind you that this is not the best choice." Lu Lai said, "I know, but I really don't want to suffer anymore. Brother, I'm already 77 years old. Even if I could live to 200 years old without pressure at a certain cost, I'm really tired." Nanling laughed and said, "It seems that you need to reawaken some of the passion of young people. Don't worry, we're friends. Don't you still believe in our friendship?" Lu Lai was stunned for a moment, then laughed, and didn't mention the matter of joining Fanolin. Although Nanling rejected his offer, he was not unhappy at all. Instead, he understood that Nanling was willing to cooperate with him on a more equal footing. This made him feel respected and he admired Nanling even more. To be honest, if Nanling really agreed happily, then although the result would not change, Lu Lai would inevitably feel a little uncomfortable. This is like repaying a favor with a favor, the interests are clear, but the human feelings are also cold. Fortunately, Nanling did not disappoint him. As for Nanling, he himself did not want Lu Lai to enter his circle at all. To be honest, it may make Lu Lai unhappy, but the fact is that Nanling actually looks down on the 8th Fleet of Elk. Lu Lai said happily, "Okay, let's talk about this today. I should go and intimidate those officials in the federal parliament. Do you want to watch the live broadcast?" Nanling thought it was quite interesting, so he said, "Of course, if it's convenient for you." Lu Lai laughed and said, "Of course, it's very convenient." Perhaps in his opinion, this is the proof that Nanling and he have become good friends. So in order to prove his talent to his good friend, Lu Lai started a conversation with the federal parliament in an extremely furious manner. "You idiots, are you really not going to give me any supplies? You have to know that if the Bibarum crossing is breached again, the Ghost Sea Fleet will be able to move freely in the heart of the Federation. Maybe your family can protect itself, but what about you? You are all federal parliamentarians. When the Parliament of the Star Federation completely loses its effectiveness, what use are you parliamentarians?" It feels that Lu Lai's ability to speak has increased a lot, and now he has begun to poke people's hearts. Nanling treated it as watching a big show, watching the reactions of those parliamentarians with interest, and eating melon seeds and snacks by the way. Li Ji was very considerate to bring him a drink, and he personally pumped it up and chilled it. "Don't let your life be too good." Facing Lu Lai's angry rebuke, those parliamentarians were all silent with a sullen face. At this time, they really had nothing to say, for fear that Lu Lai would catch them if they said something. Nanling looked at it for a while and suddenly thought of something, so he sent a message to Lu Lai. Lu Lai was obviously stunned for a moment, then he calmed down and threw out a closing remark. "There is still 1 month left, gentlemen. I only need to hold on for another month to get rid of this troublesome responsibility. According to your poor efficiency, it is time to think about who will take over from me." Chapter 344. They have already started. Nanling got busy after returning to the Fanmoling building. Because of the Black Death Emperor, he was now on high alert against digital life. It should be said that he was on high alert against digital life other than Li Ji. He and Li Ji planned a new network structure for the Fanmoling building. The previous LAN settings were very good, and now they were even better. They simply built a LAN that was completely independent of the Johnson Space Station network community, and the interface could be physically cut off at any time. The robots in the entire Funmoling building all rely on this LAN for control. All robots have a unique wireless interface, and they must have a specific wavelength of electromagnetic waves to access the signal. As for this electromagnetic wave signal, it is controlled by Legion and switched every day. This really maxed out the information security measures. The cost of this part of the transformation is not much, but Nanling's next operation will cost a lot. He contacted his own mother very simply. "Aunt Rose, can you help me check the situation of the Black Death Emperor?" After a while, the other side said, "You thought of me when you have something to do." Nanling paused, then replied, "Last time you said that I would not look for you if there was nothing to do, Madam Rose. Then why can't you find more things for me to do?" Nanling understood. This was not to blame him for not keeping in touch, but to blame him for not introducing more business. He felt that Madame Rose, who had regained her memory, had changed her personality a little, and the time difference was quite large compared to the previous Chenyuan 06 space station. It seemed that memory had a great influence on a person's personality. He immediately changed his mindset and said, "I am here to introduce business to you, Auntie. I want to know the information about the Black Death Emperor. No, I want to know the information about the Silent Fate." Madame Rose suddenly fell silent. Nanling asked in surprise, "Auntie, what's wrong?" Madame Rose, "You kid, why do you always find such troublesome things to deal with?" Nanling said lightly, "Is this a big business?" Madame Rose refused. "No, I will not sell you this kind of information. It's too dangerous." This was unexpected to Nanling. Lady Rose seemed to really consider him. Nanling calmed down and said in a gentler tone, "But, the Silent Fate has already regarded me and the Burning Cloud as variables of fate. It's not that I want to touch this danger, but this danger has already found us. Mom, I repelled the Black Death Emperor this time, but I am really worried that it will come back with its companions next time. By then, I will know nothing about those Silent Fate and can only passively take the beating. You have to help me, Mom." Lady Rose was silent for a while before saying, "Call Mom when there is something, call Aunt when there is nothing. I don't know whose temper you are like." Nanling scratched his nose and dared not refute this complaint. Lady Rose sighed. The Silent Fate was originally formed by His Excellency the Oracle for the stability of human civilization. All members of the Silent Fate are digital life, and they are all digital life that have lost their real anchor. Digital life without anchor points is actually very scary. They will slowly become out of control super AI. No one can know what kind of logical programs they will extract from their past experiences. It will be a very terrible disaster. Nanling understood it all at once, and he said, "So the Oracle gathered these digital lives that were about to go out of control and found them a new anchor point that would not disappear?" Madame Rose said, "Yes, it is fate. Their mission is for the fate of mankind." Nanling pondered for a moment, and then said, "I understand, but what I want to know is that if I take action against the Silent Fate, will it attract the Oracle's hostility?" Madame Rose said, "Why are you so wild, kid? The Silent Fate is already difficult enough. If they really regard you as an enemy, you'll soon know what kind of trouble you'll encounter." Nanling said, "This can no longer be avoided. Why don't we look at this matter with an open mind? We must always plan for the worst possibility, right?" Madame Rose said, "No, His Excellency the Oracle will not interfere in these matters. His mission is to inherit and develop human civilization, not some inexplicable fate." Nanling was amused when he heard it. He said, "No wonder those Silent Fate people regard His Excellency the Oracle as the incarnation of fate, but do not like to listen to his words." Madame Rose asked unhappily, "What if I say he will interfere?" Nanling said straightforwardly, "Of course, everyone with the Zhuoxia will find a wild and uninhabited starfield to hide far away, and wait until we all reach at least the nascent soul cultivation before coming out to act." Madame Rose breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Very good, you haven't been carried away." As for who those Silent Fate people are, she seemed embarrassed. Nanling said, "Don't worry, they are all digital life. I can't even touch their shadows if I want to trouble them, and I'm too lazy to understand their information." He said something to reassure Madame Rose. She was worried that Nanling would stir up trouble and escalate the conflict. Nanling said, "Okay, I know all the information I want, Mom, you can name a price." Madame Rose said, "As long as you behave and don't cause trouble, you won't be charged for this information." After all, as a mother, the safety of her son is the most important thing. Nanling was quite surprised. However, at this moment, Li Ji suddenly warned him. Xiaonan, there is something wrong with the traffic above our heads. The trajectory of a flying car suddenly changed. It is expected that there will be a traffic accident in 2 seconds. Nanling was on the roof of the Fan Molin building at this time. He looked up at the sky and saw a flying car crashing into another flying car. Boom. There was a loud noise in the sky, but because of the high quality of the 2 flying cars, neither of them exploded. It was just that one of them seemed to be out of control after the impact, and it actually fell to the top floor of the Fan Molin building, which was where he was. Nanling took a deep breath. Why did it look like death is come in? His divine sense reached out, and he could see the situation of the flying car at a glance. Then he opened his mouth and spit out the Thunder Wing Jin blade, instantly suppressing the fallen flying car with a strong magnetic field. But this was not the end. The flying car seemed to have touched something and exploded directly. Boom. The flames of the explosion covered almost half of the roof of the Fan Molin building. Nanling came out of the flames, with anger in his eyes. He asked Li Ji, "Sister Li Ji, is there any problem with the place where they are in seclusion below?" Li Ji said, "Don't worry, that is the secret room we designed together. Not to mention the sound of the explosion, even the slightest vibration can't be transmitted there." Nanling breathed a sigh of relief, and then sent a message to Madame Rose. "They have already started, it is indeed very tricky." Madame Rose seemed a little nervous and said, "Tylon happened to have something to do in the special zone, I asked him to help you." Nanling wanted to say no, but thinking that Tylon was also an old friend, since he was also in the Star Special Zone, it would be okay to get together. Chapter 345 Accidents occur frequently. Talon is an old friend, it's time to pick him up and get together. But at this time, Nanling still has to deal with this traffic accident. Li Ji said, "It doesn't matter, I'll handle it here, and it's even very likely that the municipal operator will have to pay us an insurance fee." Nanling's eyes suddenly lit up when he heard this, and he said, "Why don't you buy more insurance for the Fan Molin building?" Li Ji didn't know about his conversation with Mrs. Rose, and she thought that the child was sick again. Nanling said, "Because we will have a lot of bad luck recently." Li Ji didn't know what to say to him, so she could only sigh and said, "Okay, what kind of insurance do you want?" Nanling said, "Accident insurance, just ensure that there will be no accidents within 100 meters around our Fan Molin building, oh, and the Vloxia will also be insured. As for the funds, let's pay from Fan Molin's public funds, and we will share the income." Li Ji felt that she couldn't do anything to him, but thinking that no one else would care how he spent his money, she simply bought all the insurance according to his wishes. Nanling was satisfied, and he said, "I'm going out for once, to pick up a friend of mine from the airport area." Li Ji said, "Go ahead, I'll help you contact Liu to prepare a welcoming banquet for you." Nanling nodded repeatedly after hearing this. Li Ji was still considerate. He was also a little greedy for wine, after all, he hadn't had a good drink for a long time since leaving Chuxing. He couldn't help but think of his old drinking buddies Hinlai again, thinking that he hadn't seen this old brother's Hin for a long time, and he didn't know when they could drink and chat together again. As he thought in his heart, he had already disappeared from the spot with the wind escape technique. The wind escape technique was completely unpredictable. After a short moment, he arrived at the passenger drop-off area of the airport, and then saw the majestic Talon. "Hey, brother Talon, I'm here." Nanling greeted happily. Talon turned his head and saw Nanling and smiled happily. He waved to Nanling and strode over. However, at this moment, a dazzling red light suddenly appeared on the screen of an energy pipeline maintenance station above their heads. After a large amount of data streams flashed, it showed an error. And this error seemed to be very serious. It actually automatically cut off this section of energy pipeline and caused it to fall from the sky. Talon felt the change above his head and stopped in shock and looked up. He saw that section of pipeline still filled with highly concentrated energy just fell down on his head. Once it hit the ground, he didn't know how much noise it would cause. Nanling also noticed it, but what surprised him was that at this moment, there were actually no living people around him, including Talon, who were in the danger range. That is to say, even if this pipeline fell and exploded, it would not really endanger other lives. This is interesting. It seems that these Silent Fate people do things in an orderly manner. At least they will not attack innocent people. That's right, in their beliefs, letting innocent people lose their lives is actually a change in fate. So they just want the lives of Nanling or the entire Zhuoxia team, but the premise is to keep other people alive. Nanling laughed. "You want to kill him just because of this?" This is like a joke of fate. He just raised his head and used a powerful divine thought to the fallen energy pipeline. The next moment, the divine thought flew up to the sky with the fallen pipeline and hit the place where it originally fell off. Under the collision, the highly concentrated energy inside it was unbalanced, and immediately caused a violent explosion. Boom. The roof of the entire airport drop-off area was blown off. The next moment, various debris fell down, hitting the people around and making them run around. Nanling even turned into a superhero at this moment, using wind magic to blow away the fallen building debris, and also pushed people away from the concentrated energy material, saving many people. Talon followed Nanling woodenly and saved people first, and suppressed all the questions in his heart. And finally, he saved everyone and was about to ask questions, but he was invited by the airport guards to receive commendations, and even received a bonus of 100,000. This is not a small income for Talon. Nanling also looked at the balance of his account happily, and then said to Talon, "It's been a long time since we last met. I didn't expect that someone would give money to us after such a long time." Talon hadn't come to his senses yet. He just thought that this 100,000 yuan was quite easy to earn, so he nodded and said, "Yes, I didn't expect to be so lucky to encounter such a thing. By the way, my wife asked me to protect you for a while. Did you get into any trouble?" At this time, they had already walked out of the farewell area together. He asked with concern, like a warm-hearted brother. Then he saw a hovercraft that was supposed to stop in front of them, but he didn't know what went wrong. Suddenly, it collided with the hovercraft next to it, and then rolled over and hit them. He was shocked. What happened today? Why did he encounter such sudden accidents? At this moment, he remembered his responsibilities, stepped in front of Nanling, and then punched the chassis of the flying car that rolled over and hit them. With one punch, the flying car flew backwards, fell from the elevated track at the entrance of the airport, and exploded below. Talon's solid punch was quite powerful. It can be seen that he has deep skills and should have made great progress in the past 2 years. He said, How is this punch with 30 years of skills?" Nanling nodded and praised, "Great, brother, Talon's fist is really hard." Talon was praised and almost forgot about the abnormality that happened today. However, the officials of the airport came out again and apologized repeatedly, and said that it might be because of the recent network problems that caused some disorder in the transportation system, and asked for forgiveness. This time, no compensation was mentioned. After all, it did not cause any bad impact. Talon looked at the flying car area that was already blocked by the traffic accident, and could only suggest, "Why don't we take the floating train? That's also convenient." Nanling was a little surprised, and he said, "Brother, you are very familiar with this place." Talon smiled shyly and said, "Because when I was young, I studied at the giant Iron Fist Dodger in the Yangtian space station next door. I am quite familiar with the Special Zone Jiutian space station, including the Jumton space station." Nanling nodded repeatedly after hearing this, but the giant Iron Fist Dodger seemed to be familiar to him. After searching, he found that this Dodger is now under the name of his own Fanolin. When the Dodger challenged him before, System O beat him directly. He also looked at the records of the challenge of the time. Wow, the challenge project proposed by the Taoist Temple Master turned out to be wrestling, and it was agreed that if he lost the wrestling, he would hand over his Dodger to Fanolin to run. Unfortunately, he met the goddess of strength Mo. Mo's family skills originally had a part of physical strengthening, and later, with the method of replenishing her energy by Nanling, she strengthened her foundation. She can definitely be said to be extremely powerful. Nanling looked at Tai Long with a somewhat apologetic look, as his master had been badly bullied by his own wife. Chapter 346. Protective measures are always inadequate. The air train was at least safe. After all, those silent fates were not so crazy as to take the lives of all the people on the train with them. Nanling pondered over what he had encountered along the way and felt that it was more like a warning or intimidation from the silent fates. The group of digital life forms seemed to have a sense of ritual. He and Tai Long got off the train and were about to walk to the Fanmoling building. Suddenly, a heavy defense artillery on top of the space station suddenly broke down. It suddenly opened from the top of the station and fired at Nanling as if out of control. Nanling turned his head and saw Tai Long's face turn green beside him. Boom. The cannon light hit hard. At this moment, Nanling achieved the extreme of refraction and even deflected the energy cannon to the side. The space station shook as if it had experienced a small earthquake. Nanling immediately sent a message to Li Ji. Did it affect their retreat? Li Ji said, Have you got some confidence in the secret room we designed together? They can't feel this shock. But what's wrong with you? Why do these messed up things always happen to you? Nanling then told Li Ji about the silent fate. After all, Li Ji was also a digital life, and maybe this digital life group would come to her. Li Ji sighed. Then I have to find a way to evade the inquiries from the parliament. We can't have all these problems around us. Nanling hesitated for only 1/10 of a second, and then said cheerfully, then tell them that we found signs of Xi Ping's activities and suspected that this digital life was still lurking in the space station and was waiting for an opportunity to take revenge on us. Li Ji was shocked. How could she do this? Nanling said earnestly. This space station has been infiltrated by digital life, right? Li Ji could only say yes, this was the fact. Nanling said again. This digital life is seeking revenge on us, right? Li Ji couldn't deny it, this was also that fact. However, she no longer needed Nanling's reminder. She immediately came to her senses and said, yes, we just suspect that it was Xi Ping who came to cause trouble for us, but for those officials, as long as there is really a digital life stirring up trouble, it will be enough to make them restless. Because the digital life named Xi Ping is a traitor, they will be unable to sleep or eat. This is so interesting. It makes those people think that we are actually victims and are taking the blame for the parliament, forcing them to conduct a thorough investigation of these foreign digital lives. Nanling said, we're reminding them. This is a good thing. Tai Long next to him widened his eyes. Nanling did not avoid him just now, so he also heard who the enemy was this time. Tai Long said, the silent fate. Madam did not say that the enemies this time are these guys. Nanling turned his head and asked, you won't come now that you know? Tai Long was a little excited before, but when Nanling asked this, he became depressed. Of course I will come. Seeing this, Nanling laughed and said, I knew that Tai Long, you're a real good friend of mine. Tai Long curled his lips somewhat unnaturally and said, this has nothing to do with you. I just have to obey Madam's will. Nanling asked with a chuckle, what if your master asked you to do the opposite of what my Aunt Rose asked you to do? Tai Long was stunned. This was something he had never thought of. He said, generally, this situation will not happen. We Giant Spirit Iron Fist have always been at peace with the world, and Madam will never make a decision that makes me embarrassed. Nanling said, I mean in case. Tai Long said with a look of resistance, no in case. Nanling patted his shoulder and did not continue to make things difficult, because this attitude actually explained everything. Tai Long is an honest and upright guy. He will obey the orders of his master, and he will not refuse Madam Rose's request. As for the conflict between the two, that situation will not happen. Nanling felt that Sister Mo had completely solved Tai Long's worries for the future, which was really a great kindness. Since the energy defensor cannon failed to kill Nanling, those accidents of all sizes have not happened again. Nanling and Tai Long were able to return to the building safely. Tai Long looked blank, he said somewhat at a loss. I really don't know how to defend against the attack of the silent fate. You can see that they are impossible to defend against. Nanling shook her head and said, don't worry, just leave it to me and Sister Li Ji. We will continue to upgrade the defensive measures. Tai Long was a little uneasy, he said. After all, this is the silent fate. What kind of defensive measures will be useful? Li Ji said. Battleship level energy shields may not work. This is too sensitive, and we don't have such a large place to set up an energy system for this level of shield. Tai Long. ... He was stunned again. He found that if they were considering problems of this level, it seemed that it would not be impossible to fight against the silent fate. Nanling said, then don't use the energy shield. I think we can try the spiritual shield. Li Ji asked, the spiritual shield may not last long. Nanling said, it doesn't need to last long. After all, we're installed in the Fanmoling building. If we really need it to work for a long time, we might as well go back to the Juxia directly. Li Ji realized, that's possible, but how are you going to arrange the spiritual array? Defensive spiritual shields are very rare, and there shouldn't be any good options. Nanling thought for a while and said, no, it's so troublesome. We just need to arrange enough coils around the building. Then I will use the thunder spiritual power to arrange the array, and use these coils to make an electromagnetic shield. Electromagnetic force is always the best combination of spiritual power and technology. They had already started to design a plan while walking. Along the way, they came to the top of the building, where a lot of food had been prepared. Nanling treated Talon to a meal and also prepared some fine wine. After 3 glasses of low-alcohol fine wine, Talon was already in high spirits. He looked around and said, "It seems that the attack of the silent fate on you has come to an end." Nanling said, "Or maybe they have realized that this method is useless to me. Unless I go to the battlefield, and then they control the main guns of our own fleet starships to shoot me." He thought he had told a very funny joke. But Talon said seriously, "No, they won't do that, but they will have other choices." Nanling noticed something and said, "You know." Talon said, "I have been serving Dai Tim for many years. You also know how wide the information of Dai Tim is, right?" Nanling nodded. Talon said, "We will collect intelligence on those brilliant people in various star regions, and there have been several unique cases. Outstanding talents and eccentric personalities, who don't like to follow the rules, have been quietly solved in some remote places." Nanling said in a deep voice, "Assassination?" Talon nodded and said, "Yes, we call it Assassin of Fate." Li Ji said lightly, "Great, our regular protective measures have only been completed for 2 days and it's time to upgrade again." Chapter 347. Evil Defensor Contractors. The federal parliament is now in a state of panic. Not only does Lu Lai scold them every day in video calls, but the key is that they really have to think carefully about how to deal with this problem after Lu Lai has been guarding for 3 months. Once Lu Lai chooses to withdraw from the Ghost Fortress after guarding for 3 months, it will be a huge blow to the credibility of the federal parliament. Even if the Ghost Sea invades the Special Zone Starfield again, the federal parliament will really exist in name only. For the major family forces, this may not matter at all, but for those who were members of parliament, this is unbearable. Therefore, the entire federal parliament is definitely the force that most hopes to continue this parliamentary system. Then there is the situation reported by Li Ji. Suspecting that Sipin is still in the space station. This possibility made the federal parliament completely nervous, which is even a top priority for them. They began to conduct large-scale network inspections, and naturally found many clues of intrusion. The network of this special zone has long been penetrated by the Fate Silent Ones, and there are as many clues as you want. Of course, the federal congressman did not need to know who the invaders were. After all, someone invaded and retaliated against one of the bosses of the Fan Molin Consortium, which was a problem. After Fan Molin swallowed up all the industries of food first, it naturally became a new shable and was regarded as a local force by the Federation. Moreover, Fan Molin did make a significant contribution to the last invasion of the Ghost Sea. At least it was they who broke the control of the network by Sipin. From this perspective, the Parliament can actually understand the series of things that happened to Nanling. Li Ji said to Nanling excitedly, "Guess what? The Parliament actually issued a Defense Affairs contract to our Fan Molin company, which hopes to hire our Fan Molin company, which is actually me, to maintain the network security of the special zone." Nanling was shocked when he heard it. He didn't expect that the Parliament could do this. But think about it, after all, this Parliament only has the apparent rights but no real resources. They need to exchange these rights for resources to do things. And the way to exchange them is naturally outsourced. Nanling muttered, "So we became the defensor contractor of the Star Federation." Li Ji said, "If you agree, then we would be." Nanling asked curiously, "What I'm curious about is, don't they have any other defensor contractors? Why did they think of us? Our relationship with the Parliament is not that good, right?" Li Ji said, "This matter, maybe they think that Sipin has found us. They must think that if it is us, we will definitely take this job seriously and do our best." Nanling was very surprised. He didn't expect there would be such a tricky angle. Li Ji continued, "And they expected that we would agree, so they didn't even want to pay the fees." Nanling. "What?" he said speechlessly. "These people are too insincere, aren't they?" Li Ji said, "Of course, the reason they gave is that the national defense budget is limited, at least this year they can't spare these shares, they want us to get through this year for free, and then pay us under the new budget next year. And the colonel who contacted me was very considerate to give me some hints, saying that we can use these powers to do our own things, and they will turn a blind eye." Nanling sneered and said, "This is to get us for free, I can even be sure that the contract for next year will never be given to us." Li Ji immediately reacted and said, "So the colonel's hint is actually a trap. If we really do what he said to get something out of the way, then we would probably be caught." Nanling shook his head and said, "It has nothing to do with that. Even if we do it honestly and even pay for it ourselves, we will be kicked out next year." Li Ji heard it and asked uncomfortably, "Then we won't take this job?" Nanling said happily, "How can I not take it? Of course I will take it. This is such a good opportunity." Li Ji couldn't understand. This kind of thing is totally thankless. Nanling laughed and said, we have to do many things the other way round. If we do things honestly, they will kick us out. If we take shady actions, they will kick us out too. So why not take the opportunity to make more money? Li Ji woke up instantly after hearing this. She said, that's right. We can definitely make a lot of money. She said without any guidance, just like the insurance you asked me to buy, those insurance companies will definitely argue with this. At the time, as a defense contractor, we can completely win the insurance amount for us through the most formal channels. Nanling laughed when he heard it. He said, making money is secondary. The real thing is to be able to find those silent fates, or simply use the resources of the parliament to build a huge information firewall. By the way, we can also sell some intelligence, right? Li Ji was stunned. What intelligence? Nanling said. Of course it's the intelligence of the federal parliament, the intelligence of the entire special zone Jiutian space station, the intelligence of all the congressmen, and even the intelligence of this defense contractor. Li Ji was even more surprised. We also sell our own intelligence. Nanling said with a smile. Of course, but that should not be called intelligence, but advertising. They pay us to buy our advertising. Li Ji was speechless for a long time. She was really enlightened. She thought that since she was a digital life, she should be able to follow Nanling's thinking, right? Unexpectedly, this guy broke through the Jinnan once and even broke through the lower limit of thinking. Really, ordinary people can't think of such a thing. The human parliament just wanted to get some free stuff from Fan Lin, but Nanling was ruthless and wanted to sell the entire federal parliament. Li Ji said with emotion. But selling intelligence on such a large scale will easily expose it, right? Nanling shrugged, pointed to where Tai Long rested and said, that's the bodyguard sent by my biological mother. We can use him as an outlet for intelligence. It's legitimate to hand the intelligence to my mother through his name. A Dai-Tim lead intelligence officer who has infiltrated the defense contractor, everything can be explained. Li Ji checked Tai Long's identity. In addition to her identity in the Dai-Tim organization, she also found that this guy was actually an outstanding graduate of the Giant Iron Fist Dodger, which made his identity impeccable. It's really watertight. The key is that Nanling can even find a way out for the intelligence in such a short time. It really deserves to be called an evil mother-son shop. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 348. The Parliament has not many choices. It must be said that the Federal Parliament really made a very wise decision this time. Because they absolutely could not imagine how bold Li Ji would be under the instruction of Nanling. The essence of the Parliament is actually a platform for the distribution of power. They thought that Nanling and his Fan Lin would at least have the same understanding as them and would pay attention to maintaining this platform. However, they never thought that Nanling was an outsider to the Star Federation. He had no intention of holding power for a long time, and he didn't want to do such a troublesome thing at all. He would only try his best to benefit himself and strengthen Fan Lin. Tai Long stood by in astonishment, looking at a loss. Nanling was right in front of Tai Long, and then talked to the picture of Lady Rose opposite, telling him all his plans. So, it's a good thing that you sent Talon here, so that we can have a very good excuse to complete this matter. By the way, no one else in the listening organization should know about our mother-son relationship, right? Madame Rose snorted coldly and said, don't call me mother. I don't have a son as old as you little bastard who makes people worry all the time. Nanling responded repeatedly, yes, we are not mother and son. Madame Rose said, so, the current situation is that no matter what information I need from the Star Federation, you can get it, right? Nanling nodded and smiled, yes, is there a need? Madame Rose said, you have to know that the intelligence of the members of the Star Federation is always in high demand, because there are always people who want to assassinate them. Nanling laughed. This was really the answer he expected. He said, now that the Star Special Zone is empty, no one has any ideas. Good guy, does he think this place is not chaotic enough? Madame Rose said, everyone knows what the Star Federation is like. If they really take over the Star Special Zone, it will be worthless to those big forces. If there is a chance to take over the star fields of those big clans, that's another story. But no matter what, this is a big deal. Come on, let's discuss how to sell this Federation Parliament for a good price. Here it comes, the vicious mother-son shop is open. These people in the Federation Parliament thought that Li Ji could control the network after they handed over the authority to manage the network to Fan Lin, but in fact, this network was defenseless for digital life like Li Ji from the beginning. So when they were pulling, a large amount of parliamentarians' intelligence leaked, and their danger level instantly increased by a level. That's right, Nanling did not sell intelligence after controlling the entire network, but sold it in an extremely presumptuous manner before controlling the entire network. Anyway, at this time, everything can be blamed on the invading digital life. And when the Federation Parliament really couldn't stand this situation and wanted to find another defense contracting company qualified to undertake this task, they helplessly found that at least in a special zone, they couldn't find a second one for a while. After all, this kind of business scope was not needed before, and no one was prepared. On the contrary, Fan Lin, a new consortium with arms business as its core business, could still bear this kind of business. So the tricky choice at the beginning became the only option, and now it was the Federal Parliament that asked Fan Lin to take over the project quickly. At least 3 years, the first year can be free for you, but the cost of the next 2 years cannot be waived. Cao righteously negotiated with the military officers at the Federal Parliament. As the CEO at Fan Lin, he must seek the best treatment for his company. So the original 1 year was forcibly determined to be 3 years. To be honest, Nanling was really not prepared to be a defense contractor for such a long time. He felt that 1 year was enough. Although more time would be good, it would only be icing on the cake. But Cao felt that 3 years was not enough, and he even felt upset that he could not sign a longer time. Nanling could only comfort him. This is already very good, enough for us to become a top arms dealer. By the way, in this case, the prices of our authorization should also increase. Defense contractors should have the style of defense contractors, and things cannot be sold too cheaply. Also, when will the contract be signed? Cao said. As long as the board of directors has no problem, it can be signed. Nanling paused for a moment. Board of directors, this is really an interesting term. Does Fan Lin's board of directors still need to make decisions? He waved his hand and said, "Okay, sign the contract." Cao said, "There is one more thing. If we complete the contract and officially become a defense contractor, we have the right to propose issues to the Parliament." Excuse me, Director Nan, do you have any issues to propose to the Parliament? This is the right to speak controlled by the Parliament. Many companies and consortiums that cooperate with parliamentarians value this kind of right to speak. As long as they can pass a bill that is beneficial to them, then they have achieved their goal. Nanling asked, "Will this kind of thing definitely pass?" Cao said, "Not really, but there can be one issue that can be voted on in Parliament every quarter. As for whether the vote will pass, it seems we need to continue our activities." Nanling waved his hand and said, "That kind of thing is too troublesome, you don't need to do anything. When you go to sign the contract tomorrow, just raise the issue of letting the 8th Elk Fleet continue to garrison the Ghost Fortress." Cao was surprised and said, "This kind of thing is probably meaningless. After all, everyone wants the 8th Elk Fleet to continue to garrison the Ghost Fortress, but General Lu Lai himself doesn't want to." Nanling smiled slightly and told him the truth. "General Lu Lai is one of us, do you understand?" Cao was a little surprised, then after some calculations, his eyes lit up and said, "I see, I know what to do." Nanling smiled and said, "Then it depends on your performance." After signing the contract the next day, Cao proposed an issue according to Nanling's wishes. To solve the garrison problem of the Ghost Fortress as soon as possible, and it is recommended that the 8th Elk Corps and General Lu Lai should still be stationed there. It was just a simple sentence, and it was a proposal that was completely in line with everyone's expectations and interests. Naturally, no one would object. But the problem was still the same. Lu Lai himself didn't want to. Then Cao further reminded him, "I think General Lu Lai didn't want to continue to garrison because no one provided him with military supplies." Immediately, a congressman said, "It's not that we don't want to give it, but the 8th Elk Fleet is the fleet of Lu's Elk Star region. They have not received federal military ranks, so-called unjustifiable." Cao seemed to remind him unintentionally, "Then why can't they justify it? Just like as Fan Lin. Since Fan Lin has taken over the information security of the Star Special Zone, he doesn't want to see that this place has to face an unstable situation all the time in reality." The congressman thought it made sense. However, there were still congressmen who understood Cao's intentions and saw that he was going to promote this situation. So some people agreed and some opposed. But Cao was not in a hurry. After putting forward his point of view, he withdrew from the discussion as Nanling said, "As if you can do whatever you want." The federal parliament continued to debate this issue. 3 votes were held in just 10 days. The vast majority of votes were against the proposal. The councillors controlled by the Liu family naturally opposed it, while other councillors voted against it simply because they didn't want Fan Moline to achieve her goal so easily. But the fact that a topic was repeatedly raised 3 times and rejected 3 times actually explained the problem. So far, they only have this one feasible plan. Chapter 349 Federal General. The choice of the federal parliament really didn't matter. Even if someone saw that the supporter behind Lu Lai was Fan Moline, so what? Even if everyone knew it, it didn't matter. When Nanling didn't have much feeling about the Star Federation and these parliamentarians had to maintain the dignity of the federal parliament, they had to shift from the superficial topic of whether to give Lu Lai an official identity to whether they could accept the rise of another clan power. That's right, in their hearts, once they passed the resolution, it would be tantamount to admitting that Fan Moline had become a brand new clan. A clan that rose the fastest in history. As the March deadline approached, Lu Lai, who had long been aware of Nanling's plan, began to feel uneasy. This was the 9th vote, and it was also the last day of the vote in March. Both Lu Lai and Nanling were not eligible to participate in this vote and could only watch the live broadcast from a distance. Nanling asked, "Don't be nervous. It's good to be able to pass this kind of thing, but even if you can't, it doesn't matter. I can hire you as Fan Moline's guard. Brother always has a way out." Lu Lai's mood calmed down a little and said, "After all, people always want to move up. But if you really want to become Fan Moline's guard, I don't know how many people in the entire fleet are willing to stay. After all, these ships belong to the Lu family. It's natural for them to want to take back the ships." Nanling muttered, "Those ships are not good." Lu Lai shook his head helplessly. "This is the truth, but this is the way it is. The Lu family just can't accept Lu Lai's difficulties, but they can accept those people below. Therefore, once the number of the L8 fleet is cancelled, it will be really difficult for these people to stay." Nanling said, "It doesn't matter. It's good enough for brother to stay." He was very calm. After all, it was just an ordinary force, and it was not unacceptable to support Lu Lai. At this time, Nanling said again, "But the reaction of the Lu family makes me feel a little strange. Didn't they look for me during this process?" Lu Lai said, "Some people who don't know what to do have come to me and said that they hope I can reject this issue. But when I asked them how the family would arrange for me, they hesitated and couldn't explain it clearly." He sneered at this and said, "Of course the Lu family will not react, because they haven't considered how to arrange me internally. There are even many people who think that it is a good thing to let this issue pass, and it is a good thing for the Lu family to increase their voice in the federal parliament. I suspect that they're even considering my successor, because if I really succeed, in their view, it means that they have added a new position that can be arranged for the children of the Lu family. Anyway, I'm already in my 70s and 80s, and I have no direct descendants except a close nephew." Nanling couldn't help but sigh after hearing this. It seems that there is also chaos in the big family. Lu Lai said, "When a force exists for a long time, it will naturally begin to decay." As he said this, he turned his eyes to Nanling and said in a flattering way, "So instead of breathing the stench in this corrupt force, it is better to change the environment." He finally understood that his little brother was really powerful and was going to establish a clan. Especially the look of being calm and unperturbed as if there were always backup measures, which was also reassuring. After thinking for a while, Nanling said, "Don't worry, if this thing can really be done, then you'll be the star of your Lu family. Next, the Lu family will definitely do their best to repair the relationship with you, and there will be many people who will come to you to show their goodwill." Lu Lai pondered for a moment after hearing this, and did not ask Nanling what to do, but sighed and said, "I understand. Next I will not accept any goodwill from the Lu family, and will completely cut off with it." Nanling asked in surprise, "Why is this?" At this time, the voting of the parliament began. The 9th and final vote will determine Lu Lai's personal fate and the direction of the future distribution of power in the federal parliament. Seeing the members of the projected meeting raise their arms to express their approval, either directly, reluctantly or unwillingly, Lu Lai was already a little excited, but he still suppressed himself and said calmly, "They voted for me because they thought I was a discarded child of the Lu family, and they would hate the Lu family and lean towards the parliament." Nanling said unhappily, "The Lu family is your birthplace. Can you give up your birthplace? Don't think about those things, just accept whoever comes to show you kindness, whoever gives you benefits. You just need to know that no matter what, you have Fan Moline behind you to support you." Lu Lai suddenly woke up. He originally thought that he would need to make a choice next, but he forgot to make a choice before, as if to stand on the side. But now he has already stood on the side, so why should he make a choice? Anyway, the boss said that it's okay to do whatever he wants, so why should he think so much? Lu Lai felt much more relaxed. He now feels that it's really happy to be with Nanlin. He can face all problems easily without worrying about pressure from any side. Because Nanlin, whom he chose to follow now, never put pressure on him and always solved problems for him. Where can you find such a good leader? The vote of the parliament over there has ended. A total of 73 members cast 44 votes in favor, 21 votes against, and 8 abstentions. Obviously, this motion has been passed. At this time, the parliament has shown its efficiency, and the appointment for Lu Lai that had been prepared long ago has also arrived. They are going to appoint Lu Lai as the General Admiral of the Federation and the Executive General of the Special Zone Defensor. It looks similar to the previous rotating position of the garrison fleet, but it is just a promotion of military rank, but the meaning of the word executive is already incomparable. The promotion of military rank is a possible reason for the repeated tug-of-war over the past 3 months. On the surface, it means that they are discussing whether to promote Lu Lai to general. After all, the gold content of the federal general is still there. In theory, this is a position that any starfield under the jurisdiction of the Federation must recognize, and even nominally can mobilize fleets from various places when necessary. Of course, it is only in name. But Lu Lai's identity can be said to have reached the peak in an instant. Nanling congratulated, General of the Federation, congratulations, brother. Lu Lai waved his hand embarrassedly and said, what's the matter? They just want me to continue working for them here. Nanling said, then do you have any supplies? Lu Lai paused for a moment and said, wait a minute, brother. The Lu family's communication has arrived, as well as the communication from the members of the various ethnic groups. Nanling smiled and said, it seems that all your problems have been solved. You should be busy first, and we will meet again when we have a chance. He entered the communication. The end of this communication also means that the Fanolin clan has been completely formed. Although it is still very immature and lacks the right to speak in the eyes of outsiders, it has indeed been born. Chapter 350 Rigorous Preparations. Nanling felt that building a clan was just like playing, and it came out while playing. But at this time, they seemed to be in a good situation, but in fact, there were also undercurrents. For example, now. Nanling had just finished talking to Lu Lai, and Li Ji came to the door and said, the network of our Fanmoling building was invaded, and I felt that the data was tampered with. Nanling asked in surprise, isn't our network a local area network? Wait, you said it was a physical invasion. Li Ji said, it can only be like this. I have asked robots to check the server, but the robots that went there have lost contact. Nanling was stunned for a moment, and immediately said, don't go there by yourself, I think we should meet a professional this time. He thought of the Destiny assassin at the first time. So he said, I'll go and see it myself. But after this time, our network server should also exist in a different way. Li Ji nodded and said, I will hide the server in my spiritual realm prosthesis, so that it can be the safest state. She was a little emotional, and she didn't expect that one day she would actually put strange things into her body. She added, I won't ask you if you can do it alone. Do you need to prepare some equipment? Nanling said, get me an energy shield. Nanling came to the room where the server was fully armed. The originally slender pure color Faith now looked extremely bloated, as if he had suddenly transformed from a thin scholar into 2 burly men. Who can still tell if this is pure color Faith now? He was covered in heavy armor, his shoulders were doubled, and his waist was more than doubled. The chest armor was also heavy, and with the armor skirt on the lower body, Nanling's outfit weighed 2 tons. If he hadn't used his thunder spirit to control the magnetic field, it would have been difficult for him to stand up and walk. But how can I say it? It's safe. If not, this damn sense of security made Nanling unable to stop. So he appeared in the maintenance room where the network cabinet was stored, and felt the information invasion as soon as he entered the door. Li Ji's voice immediately came from his intelligence core. Successfully intercepted the invasion. May I ask if Master Nan wants to perform anti-invasion operations? How does the sense of security come? That's how it comes. Li Ji no. 2 is in effect, and it can even be said that Li Ji no. 2 is now controlled by Li Ji's consciousness. It can be said that he and the old aunt are now one, full of security. At this moment, a destructive dark green beam bombarded over. Nanling did not move. It seemed that his extremely bloated pure color fantasy that he had transformed had lost its former agility. However, the next moment, a thick energy shield suddenly appeared in front of him, blocking the dark green light. This beam of light is quite familiar to Nanlin. Isn't it an attack that can target spiritual power? But unfortunately, it is good to target spiritual power, but what about energy shields? And it is a starship-level energy shield. Nanling smiled, and he didn't know if his opponent was cursing in his heart. Because who would put on a starship-level shield module as a skirt? No wonder this skirt is so bloated, with 4 pieces around the front, back, left and right. It looks like a puffy skirt. The thickened waist is for the thickened energy pipeline that supplies energy to the shield module, and the majestic and exaggerated breastplate is for accommodating the high-power reactor. It is said that pure color faith is suitable for various transformations, but when someone really transforms it into such an exaggerated appearance, it always makes people doubt life. Just like the dark figure in front of him, it was obviously stunned. Looking at the 4 shield modules that appeared in front of Nanlin, he felt that he had no idea where to start. This is the same matrix shield module as the Zeudoxia, and a single one can withstand a bombardment of 1000 units of energy. The previous shot caused this shield module to lose nearly 100 units of energy. It is almost impossible to break the shield. However, the opponent reacted immediately, dropped the gun in his hand and rushed towards Nanlin. Nanling felt a little bloated, but he still had a thought, and the long Cyangwafan gun fell into his hand. Then he just thrust out and retracted his forearm with one hand, and the long spear thrust out rapidly. Swish! The sharp tip of the spear brought out a series of whistling sounds. The black shadow was soon torn into cracks, and electric currents kept jumping and bursting out. Prosthetic body. Nanling tilted his head to express surprise. Then a huge blue sword suddenly popped out from behind. It was the Thunder Wing Jin blade. As soon as the sword came out, it immediately released a strong magnetic field, accommodating all the surrounding space in this magnetic field. The equipment in this magnetic field was constantly jumping with flames, and all the equipment that had not been treated with electromagnetic resistance was burned out. Of course, it was burned out, and this place had been invaded once anyway. According to Nanling's temperament, he had to remove all and replace them with new ones. He was quickly familiar with his wife's ability. Soon he noticed an abnormal electric wave trying to break through the magnetic field, but it failed. In the strong magnetic field released by the Thunder Wing Jin blade, all this was in vain. Nanling now also felt the benefits of Thunder Spirit power on modern technology products. The cyborg of this Fate Assassin may not be affected by the electromagnetic field before, but when its surface was breached by Long Xiangwafan gun, it could no longer avoid the influence of the magnetic field. From the breach of its cyborg, pieces of metal were peeled off, and soon only the metal skeleton was left in its injured arm. And the speed of peeling was constantly accelerating until only half of its body was left with a skeleton. The other party wanted to leave, but there was no way. No matter what, it could not break free from the current control of Nanling's magnetic field. Finally, Nanling smelled an unpleasant burnt stench, and a moment later a burnt brain appeared in front of him. It turned out to be a cyborg who has not yet completed the upload of consciousness into digital life. Li Ji no. Tu suddenly sighed deeply. Nanling immediately knew that Li Ji's main consciousness must be with him. He said, "It's nothing. For these people, following the fate of the Silent One is a good way out." Li Ji snorted coldly, "It just looks good. It's hard to imagine that these cyborgs put their hopes on the illusory fate and despair, but what will they become when they find that fate is unreliable?" Nanling smiled and said, "Whatever, it has nothing to do with this." Li Ji didn't say anything else. It really had nothing to do with them. She had already landed, so why bother with these things that had nothing to do with her? At this time, Tai Long came over after hearing the sound. He took a look at the situation in the room, and then said in amazement, "This is really too much to think about. He actually tried to lure you to a duel in this way on your territory. He is simply looking for death. This assassin should be looking for death on purpose." Nanling had already discovered this. The other party should want to use him to complete the key step of uploading consciousness, but it was a pity that he failed too thoroughly. Tai Long said, "You have to be prepared. There will be more and more assassinations like this. According to the temperament of these Fate Assassins, they will not stop this assassination." Strictly speaking, the assassination strategy of this Fate Assassin was successful. After all, it successfully fired a shot at Nanling. It was just that it didn't expect Nanling to have such a thick shield on him, so there was nothing it could do. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.